live from Studio 6B. Yes, we are here. Here we are on a Tuesday night, VP Debate Night. Live on all the socials at LFS6B. Twitter, YouTube, X, Getter. Every place on socials and just on socials, so we can say what we want.
Oh.
What's wrong, Delgado? You look like you've seen a ghost.
No, I'm looking at Cobra Kai over here. Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Hold on, Cobra Kai. Strike first, strike hard, no mercy. In honor of J.D. Vance.
He's going balls to the walls tonight.
Wow.
So you're dressed for the occasion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I'm ready for this.
I like this.
I'm hungry. Because I think Trump got robbed. We really want to see a knockout punch. Today it comes.
He wants to see it. He wants basically Trump to, Vance to sweep the leg.
Yes.
Sweep the leg.
Yeah, sweep the leg. Well, I think there's a good chance of a face plant tonight. I don't know if it's from sweeping the leg, but
See.
I give it better than a 50-50 shot.
I hope so.
That's exactly what could happen.
Come on.
Live from Studio 6B, glad you're in on a VP Debate Night. We're going to be covering it all. We're going to hang with you for the first hour here. Just on socials, and we'll probably join Real America's Voice at some point. Their coverage that's already started. Then from 9 to 10, we'll exclusively have the debate, at least some of the audio. We'll have the audio, and we'll have it... how are we going to think about that?
Haven't really worked that part out.
We got to have it up here in the studio. So while we're on the other set tonight, we're on our normal set, not on the secondary set where we normally do the debates, and we have the monitors to watch the debate. We haven't really thought that through yet, so we'll have to figure out where we can watch the debate.
I don't think you've thought any of this through.
Don't give away
Really?
Don't give away our secrets. Maybe you could punch it. Oh no, okay, we'll figure that out. But anyways, 9 to 10, we're going to comment on the debate in real time if there's things to comment on. I'm not going to just talk for the sake of talking, but we'll give you live feedback on what we're seeing and what's going on. Slick's here. He's going to do some sports. Delgado's here. He's going to do maybe some news if we have some time. Kevin Downey Jr. is here. He's ready for battle. J.D. Vance tonight and Tim Waltz. And, I said all day today, like my 9th stream of the day, I said all day today that I felt like this night had a chance to, like Kevin said, usually these VP debates, they say they don't move the needle. But, I think in more ways than one, especially with what's going on in the world today, I think the landscape for this debate has changed, given what happened in Israel today, given what happened at the port strike, and just given the fact that you have one guy on stage who's going to be very disciplined, very smart, sharp, intelligent, articulate, well-versed in all the policy, not going to get thrown off his game, and you have another guy who is, a moron. So it's going to come down for me, and I'll go around and see what you guys think. For me, it's going to be a little bit about, will the moderators allow this to be a battle of the Rust Belt, which these two candidates, I don't know why Waltz was chosen. I mean, who knows? But, J.D. Vance is there to get votes in Ohio, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, these kind of places. And Tim Waltz is put out there, and we're told like he's that that cool football coach guy, kind of put on your winter coat and go to the mall with him. He's an old fun guy to hang out with. Well, so will they make it about the things that are important to the voters in those areas of this country? That for me is the question. Will the moderators make it about policy? And if they do, J.D. Vance is going to smack this boy around like there's no tomorrow. Because if it comes down to policy, this is a wipeout. Now, the moderators, of course, have all week thought to themselves, how do we get this dunce across the finish line without making it a wipeout? Because on policy, we know he's going to get wiped out. They know he's going to get wiped out. Claire McCaskill said so yesterday. So how do they avoid that? Well, one way they can avoid it is by asking Tim Waltz questions, not about policy, but about other things like, Governor Waltz, President Trump said, things like that, where we can get them. So that would be my expectation. I think this could be maybe the worst of the three debates as far as the questions go from the moderators. But we'll see. Kev, give me your thoughts going in on what you could expect and what you think the moderators will do.
Thank you, Big D. I kind of wish we had bingo cards.
Yeah.
With I would want this because he's going to come out like this with that low T Tim Walz wave he's got. I think that's going to come up. I think I mean everything you said is absolutely dead on. J.D. Vance is a very clever guy. Walz is a commie stooge, and he has nothing. I just hope J.D. brings up that the Oversight Committee is looking into Tim Walz's connections to China right now. I think that's very important. I kind of think that's why he was selected for the job. I think the communists just said, all right, Kamala, go get him. That's the one we want. Because he's so close to China. He loves China. He's a pinko. I also think he has a bad temper. Do you see him flip off the fans at Ann Arbor University? First of all, Ann Arbor is the most commie-rific town in the nation. So to get people who hate Tim Walz there, that's hilarious to begin with. But flipping them off, he's got a temper, I'm reading. And if JD can get under his skin, this is going to be great.
Okay. Any thoughts on the moderators going in? What you expect from them?
Oh, I expect the same thing we saw during the Trump Kamala Harris. They're going to fact check him, and half of those are going to be wrong. They're not going to fact check Walz because, well, they're on the same side, and that's the Prov de Press for you. But absolutely, it's going to be JD versus 3 again.
Now, CBS has outwardly said because Trump blew the whistle on ABC, saying, "Hey, we had a deal not to fact check." So CBS has, in front of this, said they're not going to fact check. So we'll see if they hang to that because, of course, Trump blew up NBC's spot by dropping the fact that they had an agreement. I'm sorry, ABC, that they had an agreement and they didn't follow it. So I think CBS will try to at least follow it because it's kind of out there now. So we'll see. Delgado, give me your thoughts.
I think we're going to just take away just a few moments of this entire thing that'll stand out. Hopefully there'll be J.D. Vance's positive ones and Tim Walz's buffoonery. I don't think there's going to be fact-checking like you just said. I think because they've seen what happens when you try to fact-check J.D. Vance. He bashes you into a billion pieces. Just ask Dana Bash.
Does.
That's how she got her name, I guess. And also, who was it, Tim Ryan that he ran against? 'Cause I saw some of those clips from their debate in Ohio, and man, he annihilated him. So this will be interesting to see what tactic they kind of use. I don't think that the moderators are going to want to be the center of attention like ABC had their moderators become. I think that's going to be an issue because I don't think they're going to step in. And I think you're right. They're going to try to phrase these questions away from Kamala Harris, away from Joe Biden, away from anything that Tim Walz has done, and it's just going to be focusing on Donald Trump is evil and Satan. How do you feel about that? That's all you're going to get. So I think that's what we're going to see. It'll be interesting to see how Vance tackles it. And again, I hope he brings up all that stuff. You were saying they're not going to.
Kev's China point's important because the House Oversight Committee is now looking into it too.
Right, the Tiananmen Square thing. That he was there for Tiananmen Square, but he wasn't.
Didn't he get married there or something?
I think he got.
He's kind of like of the Bernie Sanders ilk, right?
Yeah,
he's very much of the Bernie Sanders ilk, kind of like Moscow.
Yep.
Yeah, well, Bernie went there on his
hammer and sickle flag in your office, like Bernie does in Vermont. Yeah,
went there on his honeymoon. Bernie did with his commie wife.
Waltz is cut from the same commie cloth.
He just wants to be hungry 60 minutes later. I don't know.
Yeah.
So there you have it.
Slick, what's your feelings going into tonight? You had some strong feelings on the last presidential debate.
Yeah. After the last presidential debate, watching it here with you, I was ready to jump out the basement window. But no, I'm feeling good about tonight. I do. I mean, I'm curious.
The basement window, not the third floor window.
No, I like to keep it very kosher here. But yeah, so CBS, the Can't Be Serious network. I don't know what's going to happen with them. You can't trust them as far as you could throw them. However, I do see Vance articulating as he does superbly. I see him, beating Tim Walz to the balls there. No question. I think we have a good night for Vance. However, how much we're going to remember of it, Rick, I think you're right. A couple of sound bites in the whole scheme of things. I don't know that it's going to have much of an impact unless Walz does a complete implant on his face. And like you said earlier.
What percentage do you give that? Better than 50-50.
Well, CBS is going to try to hold him up, carry his
Well, I
water
know they're
as
gonna
much as
try.
they can. But, I think Vance might really punch him around. But we kind of expected the same thing with President Trump in the last debate, and we saw how that turned out. Although I didn't think he did as bad as we thought after watching it a couple of times over. However, I think, this kid's very sharp, this Vance. I underestimated him when Trump first took him on. I didn't know he wasn't my first pick. But you know what? I got behind him. I like the guy. I like his values. I like the way, again, he articulates. Sharp kid. Give me the Yale grad any day, Big D, over this guy. Where did this guy Walls
And
go
the
to school?
former Marine, is that what he was?
Yeah.
Yeah, Marine.
He's
Semper
he's
Fi.
not going to be. He's not going to be thrown off his game.
No way. And that hey, listen, you basically, and I'm going to just close with this, Big D. You got to realize, people, you're going to be one heartbeat away from one of these guys in the unfortunate instance that either one of them are assassinated or something dire happens to either one of them, because you don't wish that on either, although some may argue one side there. But quite frankly, one heartbeat away. Pay attention tonight, because this could be your next president. And I wouldn't mind J.D. Vance being our next president, because I'd love 12 years of this run. I'm sure you boys would agree with that. That's a wrap for me.
Yeah, I think those are some good points. So Delgado, you don't think where do you think the moderators fit in? You think they're
I think they're
they
going
control
to
the night, or they're a non-issue?
I don't think they're going to be as big an issue as they were for ABC.
Really?
I just
why
think,
is that?
I just think they saw what happened. They're like, do we want to go there? I don't think so.
With Vance, you mean directly?
Well, with the American people, I don't think they want that to be
What about subject matter?
subject
They're
matter.
pretty much in control of it. You think we're going to get real subject matter, or we're going to get, like I said, see, to me, the way they keep Vance away from policy is to ask Vance not policy questions, but
Right.
ask him about other things, other people.
Yeah, they're going to ask him, well, didn't you say this about President Trump back in 2016 and blah, blah. We'll probably hear that, because that's, that sets them up perfectly for what they want to do.
See, I can't see Waltz being going into the presidential debate with her, I just figured she would be so programmed and rehearsed, and even she outdid what my wildest dreams could be.
Right. Which is why, again, everybody
with
thought
him-
she did great.
Yeah. With him, man, I just can't see him. I don't see him in the same light.
Well, he's like the unfunny, unlikable Chris Farley, right? That's what you're going to get. You're going to get this buffoon who's not really that, likable, much like the his running mate. And I know we were talking. I think did you mention it before the show even started? Why she even picked him or something like that, or I don't know. Because let's face it, Josh Shapiro would have been superbly more talented than a Tim Waltz.
Yeah, what a creep he is. I saw him on TV tonight. What a creep.
But she basically had no choice, and he was not attaching himself to the sinking ship. So, but back to the debate. You know what? I just wanted to see some haymakers. I want to see somebody go down for the count. I want to see maybe a spit bubble come out the side. That'd be fun.
Well, the other thing is the current events issue, I think, really throws a interesting curveball into this whole night. With the storm, you've got parts of this country underwater.
Mm-hmm.
What's going on in North Carolina? With the port strike, what's going on there? You've got this mob-like union boss talking about bringing pain to the American people. Meanwhile, he's pulling down $1 million a year. He's got a yacht and a Bentley, and he's telling us he needs a 75% raise. People are trying to find food and water, and this port strike's not going to allow them to even get supplies if this thing goes on for any amount of time. Supply chains are under attack. I don't think that reads well at all in the room or for the incumbents. You have our number one ally with 300 ballistic missiles under siege in the world on fire at a time where the former president and the hopeful president and vice president see the world through a very different lens than he does in her. And I don't think there's any way the moderators can avoid, because they're so in the cycle right now. The storm, Israel today, supply chain today. You can't avoid those three subject matters tonight. It wouldn't have any credibility. You cannot avoid them. And I just think all three of them set up for J.D. Vance. Kev, what do you think, to just knock it out of the park on all three?
I think that'd be great. You have to talk about it. These are game changers. These are things that threaten our way of life. These are things that threaten the lives of people who, like you said, they can't find a bottle of water in North Carolina. And if this, I'm hearing that we could lose as much as $5 billion with a B dollars a day.
That's what comes into these ports, $5 billion a day. It's not maybe, it's a fact.
And so these aircraft carriers are $15 billion. We're going to lose one aircraft carrier every 3 days and that guy, can we play his voice? That guy just, the knucklehead from
the president of Longshoremen?
Who, Longshore Gotti?
Daggett?
Hey!
We do have cut number 11
fresh.
of him talking about it. And you know what? And say what you want, I understand his position. His position is, I've got to fight to get the best deal for my people, period. That's it. That's what they want, and that's what they feel they deserve. That's great. Maybe the way he put it is a little, off-putting to people, but it gets people's attention, doesn't it? And if it drags the people who need to make this deal, and it's not the federal government that needs to make this deal, it's the businesses that kind of pay them all, drags them to the table and says, look, you gotta cut us in on what you guys are bringing in and do a little better job on it.
That's a nice economy you got there. I hate to see something happen to it.
Yeah, exactly.
Did you see the story in the Gateway Pundit today about this guy's former?
The guy he was on trial with.
Yeah, he's a nice guy. This guy, I like him. The more I read about him,
it's like,
maybe stay out of the fray of talking about him.
They found him in water.
Good idea. Delgado have to start your car before we leave the studio.
Oh no, I'm on. I just
stop my car.
No wonder Delgado's like, hey, I support the guy.
He's my guy.
Review.
I'm down with him.
Why are you asking only for 75% raise? Go for 80, buddy.
Espresso or cappuccino? What do you like?
Well, here's cut number 11. Check this out. Here he is talking about, basically that he means business.
Over the weekend, the past
Secretary of Labor Julie Su has been terrific. She's knocking down doors. She's trying to stop this. She's trying to get us to a media where we can have a fair negotiations. It's the companies that don't want to. They don't want to sit here and be fair. So that's why we're out here fighting for our livelihood.
What more from the automation do you want? What more protections could there be?
What more?
Yeah, they have language in there now.
Not strong enough, because what happens is they come in with new technology. We just caught them in Mobile, Alabama, called Autogate, and that means the trucks are coming in and they're already checked in somewhere else and not using the checkers in the ILA. Circumventing the contract. They don't care. They don't care. It's not fair. And if we don't put our foot down now, they would like to run over us, and we're not going to allow that.
You are going to grind the economy to a halt here on the East Coast and the Gulf Coast.
No, not us. They are. Don't spin it now, because you're Fox News. They're going to drive it.
But are you worried?
They're going to drive it.
Are you worried that this strike?
They have the capital to settle this thing.
Are you worried that this strike is going to hurt the everyday American, the farmers that need to reach the export market? They're telling me that they're going to hurt through all of this.
Now you start to realize who the longshoremen are, right?
Nobody cares.
People never gave a about us until now, when they finally realized that the chain is being broke now. Cars won't come in. Food won't come in. Clothing won't come in. You know how many people depend on our jobs? Half the world. And it's time for them and time for Washington to put so much pressure on them to take care of us, because we took care of them and we're here 135 years and brought them where they are today, and they don't want to share. And I'm done.
And he's done.
I'm done.
Done.
Don't spin it, baby. I love it.
Yeah.
Hey.
I mean, he makes a good point.
I mean, Jesse Kelly, I thought, put it the best, because you could say he makes a good point, but I just don't think that reads too well around the country.
It doesn't. Right. I agree.
And this is why, as he said, a lot of these things should just be kept private, because you can agree for fighting for your contract and fighting against the men holding them down, or however they want to phrase it. But most people, especially at this time in this country, look at guys making $150,000 and think they need a 75% raise and they're going to hold up people in North Carolina rebuilding a house and they can't even find food and water. It just, I mean, you just got to read the room at some point. Maybe these negotiations shouldn't be happening in public. I don't know what the answer is, but that to me just doesn't read that well.
Yeah. I mean, unless you start drilling into the details and then you find out, well, that raise is actually spread over what, like 5 or 6 years?
Yeah.
And what do you call it? What else do they want? The automation, I guess, is a real big
Automation's already in their current contract, as
Right.
you heard her correctly say.
Right. But he pointed out they keep basically breaking that part of the contract by going around it, coming up with different technologies and putting it in places just before, I guess, they get to where these guys are.
Mm-hmm.
So, there's shenanigans on both sides.
I mean, you heard him vaguely mention there quickly, Washington needs to put enough pressure. So in the end, of course, that's a direct. That's talking about Biden.
Yeah, because
He's the big
Biden,
union guy.
Isn't he the union guy?
That's what I've heard.
I don't see him agreeing with the guy. I don't see him standing up for the unions.
Biden is like, number one, out to lunch. We know that. But it reminds me, I mean, I've talked about this now, especially if you're following me in the mornings. We've been talking about this for 4 weeks. Zero Hedge was on this early on. Nobody even knew what was going on. And if you go back, I remember looking at the article going, well, this seems like something I should probably talk about. But I thought to myself, well, there's no way this is going to get to.
Right.
It's just, how could the administration, at a time where we're battling inflation, the Fed literally just did its first rate cut, 50 basis points. In history, we've seen inflation come back for a second bite of the apple. So it's not like inflation can't come back. How could they possibly let something that is so inflationary as the supply chains, talk about too much cash, too many dollars chasing too few goods, while shutting down the supply chains like this would be the pure definition of inflation. You want to cause inflation to spike, throw gasoline back on it. This would be the way you would dream up doing it.
Yeah. And not only that, again, you lump into the equation the natural disaster of the hurricane and how it's affected everything in that part of the country. It's a recipe for disaster, and guess what? The disaster known as the Biden administration is completely out to lunch.
Oblivious to it.
Yeah. They have no idea what to do. They have no idea how to tackle this.
Remember the baby formula shortage?
Yeah.
When he was like, oh, there's a shortage?
Yeah.
Oh,
I had no idea.
Really?
It's like the same thing. It's like, whoa, they're on strike already?
Yeah.
Oh, wait, huh?
Wow.
I mean, listen, in the end, politically speaking, it can only help Trump. So in that respect, good job. But I'm shocked they let it get to this point. Shocked.
Unless, of course, this leads us to the third of Yuri Bezmenov's 4-point plan, which would be crisis, where everything falls apart. You go after the infrastructure, you go after the economy, you go after the military. This could hit all of those. This could be bad. This could be a reason to, I don't know, maybe throw the election off a couple weeks. Maybe we'll get back to it later, to save democracy or something like that. I don't trust anyone on the left to not use every single situation they can to their advantage in this election.
I was, speaking of that, Kev, you guys will like this. Delgado, you'll definitely like this. I was doing an Instagram live before from the studio, just doing a little warm up, talking to the fans on Instagram, and somebody brought up the idea of if Tim Walz is having that bad a night tonight, this thing starts at 9, and let's say by 9:40 it's clear that he's face planting bad. Could we get a breaking news story about an attack in Iran to take this debate off of the air?
Yeah.
Stranger things have happened.
In any normal world, I would have said, "Come on."
Right.
Come on.
We interrupt this disaster to tell you about another one.
Yes. We interrupt this Category 3 disaster to bring you to a Category 4 disaster halfway around the world.
Let's go from this bomb over here to these bombs over there.
I'm worried about a war trumping the election. That's
what do you think about that, Kev?
You know what? I thought about that earlier tonight. The timing is really, really interesting. That we're looking at the brink of World War III. We're about a month out from the election.
I was thinking about that today.
We're paying for both sides of that war in the Middle East.
Yeah.
The military-industrial complex is eating well tonight. And I can't help but think maybe this was planned. Because you know what? We have a military-industrial complex. We're not the only nation that does, I'm sure. I'm sure Iran's got something in this. They want to fight. They've always wanted to take down the big devil Americans and whatnot. I'm not sure that there isn't a cabal of people, let's just call them the New World Order, who are not behind this. It's just too convenient to me.
Hogan, Nash, and Paul, the New World Order.
And then you've got this outage from Verizon. You guys hear about this?
Yeah.
You know, I'm on.
What's new about that?
Here, let me just. yeah, exactly.
Come on. Does that breaking news?
I'm
They're
on
always out.
Verizon, and I couldn't tell any damn
Outage.
difference.
I mean, I got to forget about it. Fiber optic.
Well,
Fiber
what's the
optic
difference
illusion. That's what that is.
What's the difference between today and yesterday, Verizon, and every other damn day?
Come on, Delgado.
I'm not on
pay your bill.
Verizon, so I don't know.
Well, I am, and I can tell you, I didn't see any difference.
I'm
It
on. I'm in
sucks every
therapy
day.
from it. Yeah.
Because the network was knocked offline for several hours yesterday, and nobody's talking about this story. Tough to find. While the issue may have been resolved, frustration lingers for healthcare workers, blah, 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 and countless others who rely on the cell service. According to telecom experts that spoke to CNN, these outages are usually tied to one of three culprits: overloaded networks and urban hubs, botched software updates. We saw that one happen with AT&T, or a technical glitch. It's always just a technical glitch. They left out the fourth one. Somebody could be doing a trial run, and it was done on purpose. So you got that happened yesterday. And it's kind of interesting. You know, all these outages that just keep happening. It's like a trial run. They're getting ready. What's coming up soon? I don't know. In what, like 30 some odd days?
Yeah.
Something. But I thought the election machines, they weren't hooked up to the internet. Oh, okay. Don't worry about it. I didn't say that.
What are you saying?
Nothing.
No, I mean, we're only on social, so you can be as Delgado as you want here tonight.
Well, I mean, it just sets itself up. Let's face it. We were told in 2020, well, these machines, they don't hook up to the internet. And then you find out later, they're all hooked up to the internet.
Well, who believed that? No one. We didn't believe that.
No, I understand that. But the fact that the government says it,
Yeah.
and then if you try to say anything about it, you get removed. Or you get shouted down as a conspiracy theorist, when the actual conspiracy was they were always connected to the internet.
Let's see. Tim Waltz arrived here in New York. Let's see what kind of energy he's got getting off the plane here. Here you go, Kev. What do you? Let's see.
Oh, there he is.
There it is.
We got that. Just like we got. What do we think? This is like
Just slide down the rail.
like Richard's little Richard Simmons energy. Liberace. What do you think?
I'm here.
Look at
Look at.
Look at me.
Look at that.
Oh, look, he does this. He does this.
Yeah, come on, Tim.
Oh, my goodness.
Come on, Tim. Don't be nervous about tonight now.
You know who does this?
Tim.
the wife.
A toddler.
The wife-
A toddler
yeah.
does this.
The wife. Who's the wife clap? Man?
Oh, there it is.
Oh, my goodness.
Sparkles.
Who's the wife clapping at here? What is?
I'm glad he let his wife in the car first.
Two-handed clap.
Let's see what old tampon Tim can string together tonight.
All right. Oh, there you go. So,
What a D-bag.
he looks ready. He looks ready. He looks ready to take on JD.
Oh,
He looks
he's
ready to take on JD.
Good
You know, here's the thing we got to hope for.
What?
I mean, these really are supposed to be nights where the people get to really see the distinction and hear from these candidates on what's going to make their lives better. And let's hope that at least, again, you know, J.D. Vance was brought on this ticket to appeal to people in Wisconsin, Ohio, Pennsylvania, the Rust Belt. Tim Waltz is from Minnesota. He's the governor. He has a record there of, well, pretty much ruining the state. And let's hope that we get some questions that actually pertain to things that people in those areas care about. Energy, inflation, oil, drilling, natural gas. Let's get some real questions about things that people care about. I don't want to hear 20 minutes about Project 2025. I don't want to hear 20 minutes about abortion. I know it's going to come up. It's going to be one, but let's, like what they did with what they did with her. 45 minutes of this just nonsense that means nothing to people. No questions about China, no questions about inflation, no questions about the debt. Let's get some questions in here. Let's let these guys go at it. But I just think they know going in there, it's such an utter disadvantage when they talk policy here tonight.
Yeah.
That unfortunately, I once again don't think that's going to happen. As much as I'd like to see it happen.
Now, we know they did the first debate to get rid of Biden. It was the earliest a debate has ever been. And they just said, we got to get this out there that he poops his pants. We want him to go away. Now, did you guys see the New York Post today? Vice President Kamala Harris revealed Monday she suffered from insomnia.
Now, is this your
Radio voice?
radio voice? Is this your
That's my broadcaster's voice.
broadcaster's
Oh,
voice?
go.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
Yes, sorry.
Come on, guys, let's go.
I usually tell people, this is my broadcaster's voice. Revealed Monday that she suffered from insomnia after President Biden endorsed her as his successor, and that she was sleep deprived the morning she picked her running mate, Minnesota Governor
stop.
Tim Walz.
No, really? Is that a story?
Throwing him under the bus already.
Wait, say that again?
Say that again.
Kamala Harris revealed Monday that she suffered from insomnia after President Biden endorsed her as his successor, and that she was sleep deprived the morning she picked her running mate, Tim Walz.
Really?
She didn't pick him.
I don't think so either.
No.
Well, that would explain the pick. It's probably accurate. What other reason would you pick this moron?
Because nobody else wanted to be on your ticket. Josh Shapiro. Gavin Newsom.
Yeah,
You can run down the line of all
Shapiro
these guys that
would've
going,
been
yes, thanks, but no thanks.
I get that, but still, there's so many other places you could land before a communist from Minnesota.
Right?
Well, how many communists want to hang out with other communists?
I mean,
That's a good point.
That's what you're stuck with, right?
You know what? I will say the communists work together, but when there's someone to pick for a position, look at Stalin. Stalin, after he died, 3 different camps. Who's going to take over? And was it Khrushchev, I think? Did he take over? And then everyone else died.
Yeah, right.
These people, when they fight amongst each other, they fight. And Stretching Gretchen Whitmer from Michigan, she's got dreams. Gavin Newsom, the reptile himself, he's got dreams. They're all dreaming of the
She's
White House.
stretching it, all right.
Ava Perone, I've got dreams. So that's a T-shirt.
And they know their dreams are dashed if they got onto the Harris ticket. That's why he was the only one who would say yes. He's like the last person. He's the last pick for the team, the kickball team.
Or
right?
it came from China. It came from China.
I think I like Kev's explanation a little better, being 0.4 of the list there, the commie list. I don't know.
He's such a bad choice.
I mean, I
a
thought
terrible choice.
the morning he was picked, I just couldn't believe it. I said, man, they really did not want to. They did not want a Jew at the top of the ticket.
Yep.
Because he's so much better. Although his TV appearance today, on a day that Israel has 300 ballistic missiles going to it, his inability to take a stand, was just unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Yep.
Let's see what's audio. I mean, we're just on socials here tonight, so we're...
He's no position coach, that's for sure.
CR, Slick looks great in that blue from YouTube. Slick,
Oh, come on. Thank you.
looking good in the blue.
Hey, did you guys check out the new signs up in New York City? The new Trump signs?
No.
No,
Telling you,
I have not been to New York City.
you don't have to. Thankfully, I have the cut for you to check out for yourself. It's cut number 1. These are new road signs, not campaign signs. Road
Wait,
signs.
is this real Delgado, or is this like a Delgado special?
This is real. I didn't do this.
Delgado special.
What?
no, I just want.
I don't know
Cut
who's
number
doing
1.
this,
Check
but
it out.
Here we go.
Okay.
This is off to a rough start.
they're all over the city. Now that is clever. I don't know who's doing it, but it's genius.
Is that the longshoreman guy driving?
Could be.
No, come on, seriously, is this?
Yeah.
Oh, I see who it is. Okay.
Scott LeBeo. He put up all these Trump signs. it's actually kind of pretty cool.
That is good.
Wow.
That's actually good.
Yeah.
That's a good idea.
That is.
Right?
Yep.
New
Yield to
York's going to
Trump.
flip.
Took me a second to realize, but I saw the.
New York's going to flip. What do you
New
think,
York's
Kev?
not going to flip, Delgado.
New York's going to flip?
Yeah.
He's going to. It may be single digits, which, hey, if it is, I would consider that for you impressive in itself. if it's single digits, because I never would dream that.
Even the Breakfast Club. You know, Charlemagne the God.
My man.
And my buddy Envy over there.
Byron Donalds was there dropping knowledge today or yesterday.
was he?
Or one of these days, yeah.
Here's cut number 4. Here they are. They're giving kudos to Trump.
He took on that Angela, whatever the hell, Rye. I think she used to be. Oh God. Please.
She's terrible.
Oh my God. I think that's her name. Now she's over there. Oh, Byron actually reached into the jacket and had to pull out the receipts that he brought with her. So,
well, this is them talking about about football and the Trump ads. Check this out. This is cut number 4.
That ad they was running during the football games this weekend, claiming the vice president supports funding gender transition surgeries for all prison inmates and migrants in the U.S. That was nuts. I don't know if it was.
I wouldn't say nuts, but that was crazy. That was funny.
I don't know if it was the backdrop of football. But when you hear the narrator say Kamala supports taxpayer-funded sex changes for prisoners, that one line, I was like, hell no, I don't want my taxpayer dollars going to that.
I definitely see that. She did
that ad was effective.
Kamala supports taxpayer-funded sex changes for prisoners.
Surgery.
I saw that.
For prisoners. For prisoners. Every transgender inmate in the prison system would have access.
It's hard to believe, but it's true. Even the liberal media was shocked Kamala supports taxpayer-funded sex changes for prisoners and illegal aliens.
Every transgender inmate would have access.
Kamala's for they, them. President Trump is for you.
I'm Donald J. Trump, and I approve this message.
Kamala took a picture with a transgender. It was this what they were saying, that it made it seem like Kamala supports transgender sex changes in jail with our money. That's what it came across.
Yeah,
That's what they're saying?
It literally said that Kamala supports taxpayer-funded sex changes for prisoners, and it talks about how she supports funding gender transition surgeries for all prison inmates and migrants in the United States. That ad was impactful. I'm not gonna lie. I was like, damn.
Was it because it was during football?
Yes,
I think it was because it was during football.
But then last week, like the contrast of it.
Yes,
but then last week they had the same thing running on Tim Walsh and said he likes tampons in boys' bathrooms.
I would not have paid that. I don't think I would have paid that commercial no attention if it was any other time. But when you're watching football and you just what the hell? In between beer commercials, they give you this.
I'm telling you, stuff like that is effective. If you've got them, they're the largest
I can't
urban morning show in the country.
Yeah, Seattle Seahawks.
They're huge.
Yeah.
So,
of course, I can't see Charlemagne without thinking about You Ain't Black.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a classic.
Of course, that was him and Biden.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to join Real America's Voice here in a second. So,
do we have a we're about to join them? All right.
Yeah. I don't hear anything, though, Aaron.
Have shut down that major shipping lane right there. It's adding cost and crushing the economies of smaller nations and the pocketbooks of people from America all the way around the world because of the added cost of the shipping that has to go all the way around the continent of Africa.
We're going to go break here,
in order
and when
to
the clock
business.
counts down,
So
and then
the only de-escalation that needs to occur is the mullahs just need to put down their arms and surrender to the Iranian people. As President Netanyahu said, we are with the Iranian people. They are not our enemy. It's the mullahs and their craziness that are the enemy of everybody.
I've got a wake-up call to everybody out there. I know all of you guys know this, but none of these terrorist groups are ever giving up or putting down their arms. They're raising their babies into be terrorists. We are going to face this for the rest of our lives, and anybody that doesn't think we are is putting their head in the sand. Colonel Maness, it's great having you on. I appreciate you spending some time tonight. I know, guys, you're going to be back with me right after this quick break as we head into the vice presidential debate between J.D. Vance and Tim Walz coming up in just about 15 minutes or so. So stick with us.
All right, sounds like you're going to go to David first and come to you.
All right, so the network's going to break, obviously, and then we might be joining them when we get out of break. So we got a couple minutes here to talk.
So talk.
I forget what we were talking about.
Well, you know what?
Oh, I was just saying, we were talking about how one of our candidates has a proven record of success, and the other one wants to put money aside so that illegal immigrants and murderers can have their lady nuts removed and be the woman they've always dreamed of being. We're choosing between those two.
Oh yeah, that's what it was. Thank you for reminding me. Got it. All right, so what are we doing, friend? They're going to come to us.
Okay,
that's fine. Plenty to do. Lots to do. Now, is that program going out to our stream so people are not just staring at us so they can see what we're doing? Okay, great.
Yeah, what you see, they will see.
Okay, perfect. All right, so let me go into the chat while we're waiting. Welcome on in, everybody. Make sure you hit the like, thumbs up, subscribe wherever you are.
Can we acknowledge the passing of another American icon?
Oh,
who the hell died now?
Another one?
John Amos.
Are you kidding? Wow.
John Amos, the great actor.
He's the guy from Full House?
No, that's John
he's
Stamos.
the guy. No, he's from the.
that's John Stamos.
Good Times, right?
He was from Good Times.
The father.
He was the father on Good Times.
I thought he was.
And you also might remember him from this. This is cut number 9. It's only 30 seconds, where he squares off with another American icon in this Eddie Murphy movie. Check this out.
I know you have been inconvenienced, and I'm prepared to compensate
King
you.
Jaffe Jafar.
Shall we say 1 million American dollars?
Jones.
No
I
way.
love this guy.
Very well then, 2 million.
You haven't got enough money to buy my daughter off.
Nonsense.
Jaffe,
Yeah.
apologize to Mr. McDowell.
I will do no such thing. The man is beneath me, and so is his daughter.
I don't give a damn who you are. This is America, Jack. Now you say one more word about Lisa here, and I'm gonna break my foot off in your royal ass.
Pardon me?
Pardon me?
Oh, yeah.
So the passing of John Amos.
Yeah.
Man.
Wow. What was he, about 80 some odd?
He was, I think it was 83.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, he was great on
He was
Good
a great
Times
actor.
with JJ Dynamite.
He was in a lot of stuff.
That was a great
he,
show.
He was only on that show for
Before your time, Big D.
I think it was one season. I remember
Janet Jackson was
watching
on that
show when that episode aired. That episode aired where he was dead. They killed off. They basically killed off a father of 3 who lived in the projects with his family. Kind of sends a message, huh? And like this iconic scene, I remember when it aired, and I was upset by it because I liked him.
Yeah. Oh, he died on the show. That's right.
Yeah, they killed him off on the show.
That's
I think it was a car accident that they killed him off.
That's right. That was.
Do we have time for
crazy.
another 30 seconds?
Probably not.
All right.
Yeah, that's okay. Do what you got to do. We're waiting. No problem. Our audience knows. We're waiting to join Real America's Voice here before the top of the hour, we think.
All right.
We can go to the cut. Okay.
Here's the iconic clip from Good Times. This is his wife, Florida Evans. Check this out.
I
Cut
remember
10.
Florida.
This is just after everybody left the apartment. Cut number 10 after they had the funeral in the wake.
Mid-70s, baby.
Damn, damn, damn!
Joe the box.
That was good.
It's from Studio 6B. Damon, first off, I apologize that we've taken some of your show here tonight on the network, but we're glad you're here, and I was just going to ask you, what do you want to see from J.D. Vance tonight, Damon?
Well, I mean, first of all, good to be with you, Grant. No problem. We always like when you take part of the show because we like watching you, and the audience loves watching you too. So,
well, I appreciate that.
Listen, I think J.D. Vance. I give J.D. Vance almost no chance to hurt the ticket at all tonight, and I give Tim Walz about an 80% chance of totally falling on his face. That is if this is made about policy. J.D. Vance was brought on to get voters in the Rust Belt in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Ohio, these places, and if the moderators will allow this to be about things that matter to those voters, then I think he wipes the floor with him. Now, what I suspect that may not. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, you know what a lot of people don't know is that Tim Walz has been around the block. He was a congressman, and he's been a governor. He's had debates before, so it's not like he's some newbie. What other people don't know also is that he's got a temper. And if J.D. Vance could prod him into letting that temper come out, I think that could be very powerful for J.D.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it absolutely could. I was thinking the moderators, how do they have to be thinking all week, how do we get this guy across the finish line and not let him face plant? And I think one of the ways they'll probably do it is to ask him, maybe not direct questions on policy, but maybe ask him questions like about other people. Governor Walz, President Trump said this, or, and not make it direct to him about policy. They want to keep him away from policy because Vance, as we know, is more articulate, more versed. He's not going to be rattled. He's going to wipe the floor with him when it comes to policy. So, listen, I hope it's about issues that actually matter to people. And we'll see. We'll see. I mean, I think current events today have thrown a real curveball and make it harder for them to stay away from some of these issues with Walz today.
All right, let me play a little montage we put together because I think part of this should be calling out Walz for his lies. Roll this and we'll get your response.
I'm a retired command sergeant major.
This is Congressman Tim Walz. He's a retired command sergeant major in the Army Artillery.
I'm a school teacher. I'm a retired sergeant major.
As a 24-year veteran of the Army National Guard and a retired command sergeant major.
As a retired sergeant major in the Army National Guard out of Minnesota.
Retired.
All right, so, Damon, it goes on and on about him claiming he's a command sergeant major, which he is not. He got bumped back down because he didn't finish all his schooling. How much do you want to see J.D. Vance call out a lot of the lies that he's been telling?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think that's one of many things he can talk about that we have video of Tim Walz. That's certainly a major one. Some of the IVF stories that Tim Walz has told is another one. Tim Walz is on video saying we have more refugees per capita than any other state. That's not just morally a good thing. That's our economic and cultural future. He could talk to him about that. There are many things, again, that J.D. Vance is going to have absolutely no problem redirecting. I think J.D. Vance has has a double job tonight. Obviously, be the guy, policy guy, be there, not that like he did with Dana Bash, not take any crap from the moderators, but I think he's going to have to direct and redirect to get Tim Walz to talk about policies, because I think the moderators go in tonight thinking we've got to keep this guy away from getting into the nuts and bolts of policy or he's going to get wiped out.
Yeah, I think you're spot on all as always, and it's so great talking to you. Studio 6B host, Damon Roberts. We appreciate you, buddy, and we appreciate you letting us take some time from you. Thank you.
No problem, Grant. Have a great night.
All right, absolutely. And I want to head over now to Rav Rumble's channel to watch Damon and the rest of the crew at Studio 6B as they give real-time commentary as the debate is going on. That should be great. Time now, excuse me.
All right, we're back on the stream. We just joined Rav. Now we're back. What's so funny, Doga?
I just got onto the YouTube chat, and the first thing I see is Big D has a style all his gnome.
What?
No, they were saying you wearing the Fetterman collection tonight with your jacket on tonight.
And the first thing I read,
the host is dressed up in a suit, and Big D's in his loungewear.
And the first thing I read is Big D has a style all of his gnome. You know who wrote it?
Who?
Rick Amorati.
Oh, somebody said I was on fire tonight. I said I'm probably going to get fired tonight.
Well, no, you're never going to get. What are you talking about? Come on. I don't care what you write.
Oh my goodness, that's so funny. The funny thing is, it's the first thing that caught my eye. Like all the comments pop up, and that's the one that's.
They also informed us that John Amos died in August, but that wasn't breaking news, was it? Poor John Amos that passed away from Good Times. He passed away in August.
No, he didn't.
He did.
The story just came out today.
That's what I saw. I just looked him up.
The story just came out today.
Yeah, well, you better look
it up on top of it as always.
The story just came out
Broken
today.
news. I mean, breaking news.
Look.
Breaking 2
October 1st.
Yeah, look.
Actor John Amos dies.
Yeah, look.
Look. Who cares? I mean, not who cares. That didn't come out right. But I mean, it's
that's
fine,
fake
whatever.
news.
Either way, we honored the man's passing.
Sounds like Tales from the Crypt here.
He died in August, but it was not disclosed to the public until today.
Oh,
well, there you go.
There you go. There's where the truth. That's where the truth lies.
That's why it's a headline.
They were holding out.
Why is that such a secret?
Yeah, who knows?
Well,
I don't know. Why would that be a secret?
No one could know that John Amos has passed.
So what did you
have to get legal stuff in order before you announce a public figure?
Maybe you had a deadline. It's like you better give
month
him
and a
this
half.
money by the end of September.
So what did you think?
All right,
what did you think about Grant's question about the stolen valor? How much time does JD spend on that? Just touch on it, pose a question to him. So the moderators aren't going to bring it up. So how does he even get that up?
He's gonna introduce it. He's gonna be just like he'll tie it into something that he'll make a claim on. Oh, you made a claim that you were over in Tiananmen Square, just like you were this blah 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 when you were serving in the army, when you were on the front lines, right? Yeah, I think that's kind of a way he can get there to tie it in.
Yeah, Chinese takeout.
So. There's a lot to tackle with this guy. I don't think he's going to have a problem.
He's got a lot of angles to hit him from.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, it's 5 minutes till the top of the hour when the debate's supposed to start. We still haven't figured out how we're putting the debate on. There's no way to get it on the main screens here, right, Aaron, without it going to program, which we can't allow? Is that
just use your Roku television in front of you and put it on. And I'll grab the audio from that.
Okay, so
don't tell the audience that.
Now, do we have one more? Do we have a couple minutes here?
Yeah, you go ahead.
We got one more.
Not another death story.
One more death story.
You got to be kidding me.
We got another goddamn death dedication.
My God. Dead TV.
Drake Hogston. Know who he is?
He's a singer.
Let's go with picture number 1.
Isn't he a singer?
Pick one. Drake Hogston.
You can't even pronounce his name.
Yeah, I know. But he was known as John Black on Days of Our Lives.
Now, I'm a big Days of Our Lives watcher most of my life. My mom too.
Yeah.
I don't recognize that picture.
Go to picture number 2.
Is there a better one?
Yeah. He's got gray hair there.
I don't know. What was his character name?
John Black. Him and Marlena Evans were like the main couple.
I know Marlena, and I know Roman, and I know
who's
John Black. If you watched it anytime after 1986, that's when he was on. You can't claim to be a Days of Our Lives.
Well, I don't know. Maybe you picked lousy pictures. I don't know what to tell you.
I don't watch those stories.
Who's Frank Fritz from American Pickers? Anybody know who that is? Frank Fritz from American Pickers?
Well, he passed away too. He actually used to play. He played minor league baseball with the Fort Lauderdale Yankees for 2 seasons before he got into acting. Anyhow,
folks in the chat were talking about Frank Fritz, excuse me.
Yeah, he was one of the 2 American Pickers.
What is an American Picker?
Is that a guitar? Is that a guitar deal?
Oh. It was a show.
Yeah, it was a reality show. They went around and found valuable junk.
Oh, valuable.
Oh, not picking like guitar. Not like picking.
They discovered Delgado.
All right, so we got the debate.
Picking up junk. I discovered junk.
We got the debate up here. Who's on the panel here? What's his name? Who's the other moderator? Can we look up who the moderators are besides... who are the 2 moderators? I know the girl who does The Face the Nation, but who's the other one with her? Margaret Brennan, I know, is one of them. Who's the other one? Do we know? I love General Hospital, Shelley says. Dr. Noah Drake. Oh, Nora O'Donnell. Okay.
She wasn't on Days of Our Lives. What are you talking about?
No, I didn't say she was.
Huh.
Nora O'Donnell, she's hosting the debate tonight. She wasn't on Days of Our Lives.
Oh.
What are you talking about?
I don't know.
I don't
know what you're talking about. I'm still on Drake Hogston.
Slick, anything happened in sports today while we have some moment here before we get to the debate?
Well, the Major League Baseball playoffs got underway, Big D. Mets had a big game today. First game of the playoffs in Milwaukee earlier today. The Mets actually did 8-4. They had a nice win.
God.
Frank the Tank is flipping out.
Going to be...
Oh, my goodness.
They're up 1-0, up 1-0.
Oh, my God.
And I'm surprised Kevin isn't gloating. His Tigers won earlier today, too. They beat the Houston Astros 3-1, and they're up 1-0 in the series. So all they have to do is win one more game, Big D, and they're moving on. It's best 2 out of 3 series. So Mets have a shot here. Look out. And a wild card, the Royals also blanked the Orioles today 1-0. That's a bit of an upset, too, there, 1-0. A good game there. And Padres right now lead the Braves 2-0 in the first.
Okay, I'm sorry, Slick. Oh.
Okay.
What's going on?
I don't know. Are they early?
We're seeing Tim Waltz and J.D. Vance at the 2 podiums, but I don't think the thing's even started yet.
No. I guess they're writing notes to each other?
They're going to start the debate at the podiums? I guess they don't walk out. Or maybe they're taking pictures. Maybe this is like the formal picture deal?
What? That's weird.
That's odd.
It will be moderated by our own Nora O'Donnell and Margaret Brennan. Ohio Senator J.D. Vance and Minnesota Governor Tim Walz take the stage. Well, they've taken the stage, so stick with us here and join us also on our streaming channel. CBS News
Yeah.
24/7.
Don't they usually get introduced?
Usually.
I would think.
Anywhere else. Thank you for joining us.
You're welcome.
You know.
Okay, John.
The abnormal is normal nowadays, guys. You know?
Huh?
I said the abnormal is normal nowadays with all this stuff.
Mike says no mention of Charlie Hustle. Did you watch the show last night, Mike?
I mean, Mike. Mike.
Come on, baby.
Come on, man. You got to tune in every night.
Come on now.
I mean, gosh.
By the way, did you see?
Devoted the whole segment to him.
Did you see his cause of death?
No.
They're saying natural causes could have been brought on by diabetes.
Oh. Miss Slick and I were talking.
He didn't look good.
Oh, here we go.
Only meeting between the 2 men who hope to become vice president of the United States. Democratic Governor Tim Walz of Minnesota and Republican Senator J.D. Vance of Ohio.
Now, this is likely the final debate of this election cycle, and voting is already underway in 20 states. CBS News polling shows this remains a race either presidential candidate could win. The CBS News vice presidential debate starts now.
Starts now.
And we're going to take this country back. And we are ready to continue to build the future together.
Come on. Come on. That guy's not winning.
He can't win. Country can't be that stupid.
So, Fran, is there any way to pipe a little of this volume in through anything other than doing it like this?
From CBS News headquarters in
Not without bringing it through the entire system.
That's what I mean. Is there a way to do it low?
Oh, I've got the volume in the background.
Good evening, I'm Nora O'Donnell, and
Okay.
thank you for joining us.
I can control the volume to the feed.
Vice presidential debate
See?
on CBS, on other networks here in the U.S. and around the world. We have a consequential night ahead, and our focus is the issues that matter to you.
Just doing it
the
here instead of-
Let's introduce the candidates. Minnesota's Democratic Governor Tim Walz and Ohio's Republican Senator J.D. Vance tonight meeting for the first time.
Okay.
I'm Margaret Brennan. In order
All right, so they just shook hands. The camera guy screwed it up, but
These are the rules that both campaigns have agreed to.
I hear the rules.
Questions will be directed at one candidate who will have 2 minutes to respond. The other candidate will be allowed 2 minutes for rebuttal. Then each candidate will get another minute to make further points, with an additional 1 minute each at the discretion of the moderator. The primary role of the moderators is to facilitate the debate between the candidates, enforce the rules, and provide the candidates with the opportunity to fact-check claims made by each other.
CBS News
Cool. Okay, I like
the
that.
candidates' microphones.
So the candidates can fact check each other. Is that what they just said?
Yep.
Oh, I like that. I mean, how do they agree to that?
I lent her one of my suits.
Senator, thank you for joining us. Let's get started. Tonight, our country is facing several unfolding crises. The Middle East is on the brink of war.
There you go.
Americans are suffering from the catastrophic impact of Hurricane Helene. And now a labor strike as 25,000
All three.
dock workers
First question.
to Texas are picketing. We're going to begin tonight with the Middle East.
Margaret. Thank you, Nora. Earlier today, Iran launched its largest attack yet on Israel, but that attack failed, thanks to joint U.S. and Israeli defensive action. President Biden has deployed more than 40,000 U.S. military personnel and assets to that region over the past year to try to prevent a regional war. Iran is weakened, but the U.S. still considers it the largest state sponsor of terrorism in the world, and it has drastically reduced the time it would take to develop a nuclear weapon. It is down now to 1 or 2 weeks' time. Governor Walz, if you were the final voice in the Situation Room, would you support or oppose a preemptive strike by Israel on Iran? You have 2 minutes.
He's like, I didn't get ready for this question.
Let's keep in mind where this started. October 7th, Hamas terrorists massacred over 1,400 Israelis and took prisoners.
1,200.
Israel's ability
to be
able to defend itself, getting its hostages back, fundamental, and ending the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. The expansion of Israel and its proxies.
I'll take Middle East for 2.
Necessity for the United States to have the steady leadership there. You saw it experienced today, where along with our Israeli partners and our coalition, able to stop the incoming attack. But what's fundamental here is that steady leadership is going to matter. It's clear, and the world saw it on that debate stage a few weeks ago, a nearly 80-year-old Donald Trump talking about crowd sizes is not what we need in this moment. But it's not just that. It's those that were closest to Donald Trump that understand how dangerous he is when the world is this dangerous. His chief of staff, John Kelly, said that he was the most flawed human being he'd ever met. And both of his secretaries of defense and his national security advisors.
I think this first answer from this is going to be a wipeout.
Yeah, it is.
This answer, he is going to smoke.
He's going to smoke his ass.
Said he's unfit for the highest office. That was Senator Vance. What we've seen out of Vice President Harris is we've seen steady leadership. We've seen a calmness that is able to draw on the coalitions to bring them together. Understanding that our allies matter. When our allies see Donald Trump turn towards Vladimir Putin, turn towards North Korea, when we start to see that type of fickleness around holding the coalitions together, we will stay committed. And as the Vice President said today we will protect our forces and our allied forces, and there will be consequences.
Governor, your time is up. Senator Vance, the same question. Would you support or oppose a preemptive strike by Israel?
That wasn't answered.
You have 2 minutes.
So, Margaret, I want to answer the question. First of all, thanks, Governor. Thanks to CBS for hosting the debate. And thanks, most importantly, to the American people who are watching this evening and caring enough about this country to pay attention to this vice presidential debate. I want to answer the question, but I want to actually give an introduction to myself a little bit because I recognize a lot of Americans don't know who either one of us are. I was raised in a working-class family. My mother required food assistance for periods of her life. My grandmother required Social Security help to raise me, and she raised me in part because my mother struggled with addiction for a big chunk of my early life. I went to college on the GI Bill after I enlisted in the Marine Corps and served in Iraq. And so I stand here asking to be your vice president with extraordinary gratitude for this country, for the American dream that made it possible for me to live my dreams. And most importantly, I know that a lot of you are worried about the chaos in the world and the feeling that the American dream is unattainable. I want to try to convince you tonight over the next 90 minutes that if we get better leadership in the White House, if we get Donald Trump back in the White House, the American dream is going to be attainable once again. Now, to answer this particular question, we have to remember that as much as Governor Walz just accused Donald Trump of being an agent of chaos, Donald Trump actually delivered stability in the world, and he did it by establishing effective deterrence. People were afraid of stepping out of line. Iran, which launched this attack, has received over $100 billion in unfrozen assets thanks to the Kamala Harris administration. What do they use that money for? They use it to buy weapons that they're now launching against our allies, and God forbid, potentially launching against the United States as well. Donald Trump recognized that for people to fear the United States, you needed peace through strength. They needed to recognize that if they got out of line, the United States global leadership would put stability and peace back in the world. Now, you asked about a preemptive strike, Margaret, and I want to answer the question. Look, it is up to Israel what they think they need to do to keep their country safe, and we should support our allies wherever they are when they're fighting the bad guys. I think that's the right approach to take with the Israel question.
Thank you, Senator. Governor Walz, do you care to respond to any of the allegations?
Well, look, Donald Trump was in office. We'll sometimes hear a revisionist history, but when Donald Trump was in office, it was Donald Trump who we had a coalition of nations that had boxed Iran's nuclear program in, the inability to advance it.
Correct.
Donald Trump pulled that program and put nothing else in its place. So Iran is closer to a nuclear
Where'd he get
weapon
that?
than they were before because of Donald Trump's fickle leadership. And when Iran shot down an American aircraft in international airspace, Donald Trump tweeted, because that's the standard diplomacy of Donald Trump. And when Iranian missiles did fall near U.S. troops and they received traumatic brain injuries, Donald Trump wrote it off as headaches. Look, our allies understand that Donald Trump
This is
going to be ugly.
Fact check.
Where it makes sense to him.
He spit out the two things he could remember. Tried to memorize. Vance is going to.
I love his look.
And we need the steady leadership
Great demeanor.
Harris is providing.
Senator Vance, the U.S. did have a diplomatic deal with Iran to temporarily pause parts of its nuclear program, and President Trump did exit that deal. He recently said, just 5 days ago, the U.S. must now make a diplomatic deal with Iran because the consequences are impossible. Did he make a mistake? You have 1 minute.
Well, first of all, Margaret, diplomacy is not a dirty word, but I think that's something that Governor Walz just said is quite extraordinary. You yourself just said Iran is as close to a nuclear weapon today as they have ever been. And Governor Walz, you blame Donald Trump. Who has been the vice president for the last 3.5 years? And the answer is your running mate, not mine.
Bingo.
Donald Trump consistently made the world more secure. Now, we talk about what the sequence of events
You note that?
led us to where we are right now, and you can't ignore October the 7th, which I appreciate Governor Walz bringing up. But when did Iran and Hamas and their proxies attack Israel? It was during the administration of Kamala Harris. So Governor Walz can criticize Donald Trump's tweets, but effective, smart diplomacy and peace through strength is how you bring stability back to a very broken world. Donald Trump is already...
Walz might cry.
Ask yourself,
Walz is like, shit, this is not working.
last time that an
Look at the
American
look.
president didn't have a major conflict break out? The only answer is during the 4 years that Donald Trump was president.
Gentlemen, we have a lot to get to. Nora?
Oh, yes.
Thank you. Let's turn now to
thank you.
Hurricane Helene. The storm could become one of the deadliest on record. More than 100
That was
more are missing.
1-0 Vance.
Climate change
Question by question here.
larger.
That was Wipeout City.
Wipeout.
More deadly because of the historic rainfall. Senator Vance, according to CBS News polling, 7 in 10 Americans and more than 60% of Republicans under the age of 45 favor the U.S. taking steps to try and reduce climate change. Senator, what responsibility would the Trump administration have to try and reduce the impact of climate change? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Sure. So first of all, let's start with the hurricane because it's an unbelievable, unspeakable human tragedy. I just saw today actually a photograph of 2 grandparents on a roof with a 6-year-old child, and it was the last photograph ever taken of them because the roof collapsed and those innocent people lost their lives. And I'm sure Governor Walz joins me in saying our hearts go out to those innocent people, our prayers go out to them, and we want as robust and aggressive as a federal response as we can get to save as many lives as possible, and then of course afterwards to help the people in those communities rebuild. I mean, these are communities that I love. Some of them I know very personally in Appalachia, all across the Southeast. They need their government to do their job, and I commit that when Donald Trump is president again, the government will put the citizens of this country first when they suffer from a disaster. And Nora, you asked about climate change. I think this is a very important issue. Look, a lot of people are justifiably worried about all these crazy weather patterns. I think it's important for us, first of all, to say Donald Trump and I support clean air, clean water. We want the environment to be cleaner and safer. But one of the things that I've noticed some of our Democratic friends talking a lot about is a concern about carbon emissions, this idea that carbon emissions drives all of the climate change. Well, let's just say that's true. Just for the sake of argument, so we're not arguing about weird science, let's just say that's true. Well, if you believe that, what would you want to do? The answer is that you'd want to restore as much American manufacturing as possible, and you'd want to produce as much energy as possible in the United States of America because we're the cleanest economy in the entire world. What have Kamala Harris's policies actually led to? More energy production in China, more manufacturing overseas, more doing business in some of the dirtiest parts of the entire world. And when I say that, I mean the amount of carbon emissions they're doing per unit of economic output. So if we actually care about getting cleaner air and cleaner water, the best thing to do is to double down and invest in American workers and the American people. And unfortunately, Kamala Harris has done exactly the opposite.
Governor Walz, you have 2 minutes to respond.
Well, we got close to an agreement because all those things are happening. Look, first of all, it is a horrific tragedy with this hurricane, and my heart goes out to the folks that are down there in contact with the governors. I serve as co-chair of the Council of Governors as we work together on these emergency managements. Governors know no partisanship. They work together to solve the governors and the emergency responders on the ground. Those happen on the front end. The federal government comes in, makes sure they're there to that we recover, but we're still in that phase where we need to make sure that they're staying there, staying focused. Now look, coming back to the climate change issue, there's no doubt this thing roared onto the scene faster and stronger than anything we've seen. Senator Vance has said that there's a climate problem in the past. Donald Trump called it a hoax and then joked that these things would make more beachfront property to be able to invest in. What we've seen out of the Harris administration now, the Biden-Harris administration, is we've seen this investment. We've seen massive investments, the biggest in global history that we've seen in the Inflation Reduction Act, has created jobs all across the country. 2,000 in Jeffersonville, Ohio, taking the EV technology that we invented and making it here. 200,000 jobs across the country. The largest solar manufacturing plant in North America sits in Minnesota. But my farmers know climate change is real. They've seen 500-year droughts, 500-year floods back to back. But what they're doing is adapting, and this has allowed them to tell me, look, I harvest corn, I harvest soybean.
What the hell is this guy talking about? Does anybody know?
Just like Kamala.
This guy's in so many directions.
Tangents.
We're also
This guy is so overmatched. It's
so the solution for us is to continue to move forward. That climate change
JD Vance is on another level when it comes to policy.
is absolutely critical. But this is not a false choice. You can do that at the same time you're creating the jobs that we're seeing all across the country. That's exactly what this administration has done. We are seeing us becoming an energy superpower for the future, not just the current. And that's what absolutely makes sense. And then we start thinking about how do we mitigate these disasters.
Thank you. Senator, I want to give you an opportunity to respond there. The governor mentioned that President Trump has called climate change a hoax. Do you agree?
Well, look, what the president has said is that if the Democrats, in particular Kamala Harris and her leadership, if they really believe that climate change is serious, what they would be doing is more manufacturing and more energy production in the United States of America, and that's not what they're doing. So clearly Kamala Harris herself doesn't believe her own rhetoric on this. If she did, she would actually agree with Donald Trump's energy policies. Now, something Governor Walz said I think is important to touch upon, because when we talk about clean energy, I think that's a slogan that often the Democrats will use here. I'm talking, of course, about the Democratic leadership. And the real issue is that if you're spending hundreds of millions or even billions of dollars of American taxpayer money on solar panels that are made in China, number one, you're going to make the economy dirtier. We should be making more of those solar panels here in the United States of America. Some of them are, Tim, but a lot of them are being made overseas in China, especially the components that go into those solar panels. So if you really want to make the environment cleaner, you've got to invest in more energy production. We haven't built a nuclear facility, I think one, in the past 40 years. Natural gas, we got to invest more in it. Kamala Harris has done the opposite. That's raised energy prices and also meant that we're doing
Senator, your time is up. Governor, would you like to respond?
Well, look, we're producing more natural gas.
No.
He's producing natural gas right now.
No, I would not like to respond. I'd like to get off the stage, please.
That's all, folks.
Massive flooding the next year. They understand that it makes sense. Look, our number one export cannot be topsoil from erosion from these massive storms. We saw it in Minnesota this summer. And thinking about how do we respond to that, we're thinking ahead on this. And what Kamala Harris has been able to do in Minnesota, we're starting to weatherproof some of these things. The infrastructure law that was passed allows us to think about mitigation in the future. How do we make sure that we're protecting by burying our power lines? How do we make sure that we're protecting lakefronts and things that we're seeing more and more of? But to call it a hoax...
Again, what the hell is he talking about?
To Mar-a-Lago, say,
I don't know. Mar-a-Lago.
And I'll let you do whatever you want. We can be smarter about that, and an all-above energy policy is exactly what she's doing, creating those jobs right here.
Governor, your time is up. The overwhelming consensus among scientists is that the Earth's
Mercifully,
climate is
your
warming
time
at
is
an
up.
unprecedented rate.
Margaret, thank you, Nora. We're going to turn now to immigration. The crisis at the U.S.-Mexico border consistently ranks as one of the top issues for American voters. Senator Vance, your campaign is pledging to carry out the largest mass deportation plan in American history and to use the U.S. military to do so. Could you be more specific about exactly how this will work? For example, would you deport parents who have entered the U.S. illegally and separate them from any of their children who were born on U.S. soil? You have 2 minutes.
So first of all, Margaret, before we talk about deportations, we have to stop the bleeding. We have a historic immigration crisis because Kamala Harris started and said that she wanted to undo all of Donald Trump's border policies. 94 executive orders suspending deportations, decriminalizing illegal aliens, massively increasing the asylum fraud that exists in our system. That has opened the floodgates. And what it's meant is that a lot of fentanyl is coming into our country. I had a mother who struggled with opioid addiction and has gotten clean. I don't want people who are struggling with addiction to be deprived of their second chance because Kamala Harris let in fentanyl into our communities at record levels. So you've got to stop the bleeding. You've got to re-implement Donald Trump's border policies, build the wall, re-implement deportations, and that gets me to your point, Margaret, about what do we actually do? So we've got 25 million illegal aliens who are here in the country. What do we do with them? I think the first thing that we do is we start with the criminal migrants. About 1 million of those people have committed some form of crime in addition to crossing the border illegally. I think you start with deportations on those folks. And then I think you make it harder for illegal aliens to undercut the wages of American workers. A lot of people will go home if they can't work for less than minimum wage in our own country. And by the way, that'll be really good for our workers who just want to earn a fair wage for doing a good day's work. And the final point, Margaret, is you asked about family separation. Right now in this country, Margaret, we have 320,000 children that the Department of Homeland Security has effectively lost. Some of them have been sex trafficked. Some of them hopefully are at homes with their families. Some of them have been used as drug trafficking mules. The real family separation policy in this country is unfortunately Kamala Harris's wide open southern border. And I'd ask my fellow Americans to remember when she came into office, she said she was going to do this. Real leadership would be saying, you know what, I screwed up. We're going to go back to Donald Trump's border policies. I wish that she would do that. It would be good for all of us.
Governor, do you care to respond to any of the specific?
Even the moderator's like, Governor, do you want me to ask you a different question?
Governor, if I had something to throw you to a lifeline here, I would, but
I got nothing.
I'll phone a friend.
I will say about this, about the fentanyl, because this is a crisis. This is the opioid crisis. And the good news on this is the last 12 months saw the largest decrease in opioid deaths in our nation's history. 30% decrease in Ohio, but there's still more work to do. But let's go back to this on immigration. Kamala Harris was the Attorney General of the largest state, a border state in California. She's the only person in this race who prosecuted transnational gangs.
No, she didn't.
She didn't prosecute anybody. Find one case.
Fact check.
We all want to solve this.
That's why he didn't want to fact check, because he knew he was going to come out and lie.
And that is the United States Congress. That's the Border Patrol agents. That's the Chamber of Commerce. That's most Americans out here. That's why we had the fairest and the toughest bill on immigration that this nation's seen. It was crafted by a conservative senator from Oklahoma, James Lankford. I know him. He's super conservative, but he's a man of principle, wants to get it done. Democrats and Republicans worked on this piece of legislation. The Border Patrol said, this is what we need in here. These are the experts. And the Chamber of Commerce and the Wall Street Journal said, pass this thing. Kamala Harris helped get there. 1,500 new border agents. Detection for drugs. DOJ money to speed up these the adjudications on this, just what America wants. But as soon as that was going to pass and actually tackle this, Donald Trump said no, told them to vote against it because it gives him a campaign issue. It gives him to, what would Donald Trump talk about if we actually did some of these things? And they need to be done.
I love how JD is expressionless.
He's perfect.
No like rolling the eyes, no shaking the head.
Hey, no making notes.
Just listen and then execute.
And he promised you, America,
Like a heat-seeking missile.
I'll build you a big, beautiful wall, and Mexico will pay for it. Less than 2% of that wall got built, and Mexico didn't pay a dime. But here we are again, 9 years after he came down that escalator.
I'll give Waltz this. He's better than Harris.
People and telling
That's
them
not saying
what to
much.
do. As far as the deportation plan, at one point, Senator Vance said it was so unworkable to be laughable. So that's where we're at. Pass the bill, she'll sign it.
Governor, your time is up. Senator, the question was, will you separate parents from their children, even if their kids are U.S. citizens? You have 1 minute.
Margaret, my point is that we already have massive child separations thanks to Kamala Harris's open border. And I didn't accuse Kamala Harris of inviting drug mules. I said that she enabled the Mexican drug cartels to operate freely in this country. And we know that they use children as drug mules. And it is a disgrace, and it has to stop. Look, I think what Tim said just doesn't pass the smell test. For 3 years, Kamala Harris went out bragging that she was going to undo Donald Trump's border policy. She did exactly that. We had a record number of illegal crossings. We had a record number of fentanyl coming into our country. And now that she's running for president, or a few months before, she says that somehow she got religion and cared a lot about a piece of legislation. The only thing that she did when she became the vice president, when she became the appointed border czar, was to undo 94 Donald Trump executive actions that opened the border. This problem is leading to massive problems in the United States of America. Parents who can't afford health care, schools that are overwhelmed. It's got to stop, and it will when Donald Trump is president.
Senator, your time is up. Governor, what about our CBS News polling, which does show that a majority of Americans, more than 50%, support mass deportations?
Look, we fix this issue with a bill that is necessary, but the issue on this is this is what happens when you don't want to solve it. You demonize it. And we saw this, and Senator Vance, and it surprises me on this, talking about and saying, I will create stories to bring attention to this. That vilified a large number of people who were here legally in the community of Springfield. The Republican governor said, it's not true, don't do it. There's consequences for this. There's consequences. We could come together. Senator Langford did it. We could come together and solve this if we didn't let Donald Trump continue to make it an issue. And the consequences in Springfield were the governor had to send state law enforcement to escort kindergartners to school. I believe Senator Vance wants to solve this, but by standing with Donald Trump and not working together to find a solution.
What's the count on him saying Donald Trump tonight?
Oh my God,
500?
Yeah, SSGTRB wants a drinking game for that.
Governor,
in the chat.
Governor, your time is up. Senator, I'll give you 1 minute, but let me just ask you the question first. The governor has made the point, and I think as a sitting lawmaker, you know that Congress controls the purse strings and any funding. So you have said repeatedly that Donald Trump would, through executive action, solve this. Do you disagree that Congress controls the purse strings and would need to support many of the changes that you would actually want to implement? You have 1 minute.
Look, Margaret, first of all, the gross majority of what we need to do at the southern border is just empowering law enforcement to do their job. I've been to the southern border more than our borders are. Kamala Harris has been. And it's actually heartbreaking because the Border Patrol agents, they just want to be empowered to do their job. Of course, additional resources would help, but most of this is about the president and the vice president empowering our law enforcement to say, if you try to come across the border illegally, you've got to stay in Mexico, you've got to go back through proper channels. Now, Governor Walz brought up the community of Springfield, and he's very worried about the things that I've said in Springfield. Look, in Springfield, Ohio, and in communities all across this country, you've got schools that are overwhelmed, you've got hospitals that are overwhelmed, you've got housing that is totally unaffordable because we brought in millions of illegal immigrants to compete with Americans for scarce homes. The people that I'm most worried about in Springfield, Ohio, are the American citizens who have had their lives destroyed by Kamala Harris's open border. It is a disgrace, Tim, and I actually think, I agree with you, I think you want to solve this problem, but I don't think that Kamala Harris does.
Senator, your time is
up.
That's
a good one.
Good one.
Yeah, well, it is law enforcement that asked for the bill. They helped craft it. They're the ones that supported it. That's because they know we need to do this. Look, this issue of continuing to bring this up, of not dealing with it, of blaming migrants for everything. On housing, we could talk a little bit about Wall Street speculators buying up housing and making them less affordable, but it becomes a blame. Look, this bill also gives the money necessary to adjudicate. I agree, it should not take 7 years for an asylum claim to be done. This bill gets it done in 90 days. Then you start to make a difference in this, and you start to adhere to what we know, American principles. Look, I don't talk about my faith a lot, but Matthew 25:40 talks about, to the least amongst us you do unto me. I think that's true of most Americans. They simply want order to it. This bill does it. It's funded, it's supported by the people who do it, and it lets us keep our dignity about how we treat other people.
Thank you, Governor. And just to clarify for
So let's just say here, 20 minutes in, could you see J.D. Vance as president?
Of course.
Could you see Tim Walz as president?
Never.
Okay, thank you.
Senator, we have so much to get to.
Margaret, I think it's important
We're going to turn out of the economy. Thank you.
Margaret, the rules were that you guys were going to fact check, and since you're fact checking me, I think it's important to say what's actually going on. So there's an application called the CBP One app, where you can go on as an illegal migrant, apply for asylum or apply for parole, and be granted legal status at the wave of a Kamala Harris open border wand. That is not a person coming in, applying for a green card and waiting for 10 years. That is the facilitation of illegal immigration, Margaret, by
Thank you, Senator, for describing the legal process. We have so much to get to, Senator.
Those laws have been on the books since 1990.
Thank you, gentlemen.
The CBP app has not been on the books.
Oh, they turned his mic off.
Gentlemen, the audience can't hear you because your mics are cut. We have so much we want to get to. Thank you for explaining the legal process. Nora.
Thank you, Margaret.
Yeah. Keep challenging him, and that's what's going to happen.
See, there you go.
Your campaign
He's wobbly.
The recent economic plan. So let's talk about the specifics. Governor Walz, Vice President Harris unveiled a plan that includes billions in tax credits for manufacturing, housing, and a renewed child tax credit. The Wharton School says your proposals will increase the nation's deficit by $1.2 trillion. How would you pay for that without ballooning the deficit? Governor, I'll give you 2 minutes.
Yeah, thank you. And Kamala Harris and I do believe in the middle class because that's where we come from. We both grew up in that. We understand. So those of you out there listening tonight, you're hearing a lot of stuff back and forth, and it's good. It's healthy. That's what this is supposed to happen. You should be listening. How's this going to impact me? The bold forward plan that Kamala Harris put out there is talking about this housing issue. The one thing is, there's 3 million new houses proposed under this plan with down payment assistance on the front end to get you in a house. A house is much more than just an asset to be traded somewhere. It's foundational to where you're at. And then making sure that the things you buy every day, whether they be prescription drugs or other things, that there's fairness in that. Look, the $35 insulin is a good thing, but it costs $5 to make insulin. They were charging $800 before this law went into effect. As far as the housing goes, I've seen it in Minnesota. 12% more houses in Minneapolis, prices went down on rent 4%. It's working. And then making sure tax cuts go to the middle class. $6,000 child tax credit, we have one in Minnesota, reduces childhood poverty by 1/3. We save money in the long run, and we do the right thing for families.
Question was, how are you going to pay for it?
This is off the ground. The law as it stands right now
But
is
whatever.
$5,000 tax credit for small business, increasing that to $50,000.
Goes off the question.
This is a philosophical difference between us. Donald Trump made a promise, and I'll give you this, he kept it. He took folks to Mar-a-Lago, said, you're rich as hell, I'm going to give you a tax cut. He gave the tax cuts that predominantly went to the top pass. What happened there was an $8 trillion increase in the national debt, the largest ever. Now he's proposing a 20% consumption or sales tax on everything we bring in. Everyone agrees, including businesses, it would be destabilizing it would increase inflation and potentially lead to a recession. Look, this is simple for you. Where are we going? Kamala Harris has said to do the things she wants to do, we'll just ask the wealthiest to pay their fair share. When you do that, our system works best, more people are participating in it, and folks have the things that they need.
Senator, I want to give you a moment to respond on that. But similarly, the Wharton School has done an analysis of the Trump plan and says it would increase the nation's deficit by $5.8 trillion. My question is the same for you. How do you pay for all that without ballooning the deficit? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Well, first of all, you're going to hear a lot from Tim Walz this evening, and you just heard it in the answer, a lot of what Kamala Harris proposes to do, and some of it, I'll be honest with you, it even sounds pretty good. Here's what you won't hear, is that Kamala Harris has already done it. Because she's been the vice president for 3.5 years. She had the opportunity to enact all of these great policies, and what she's actually done instead is drive the cost of food higher by 25%, drive the cost of housing higher by about 60%, open the American southern border, and make middle-class life unaffordable for a large number of Americans. If Kamala Harris has such great plans for how to address middle-class problems, then she ought to do them now. Not when asking for a promotion, but in the job the American people gave her 3.5 years ago. And the fact that she isn't tells you a lot about how much you can trust her actual plans. Now, Donald Trump's economic plan is not just a plan, but it's also a record. A lot of those same economists attack Donald Trump's plans, and they have PhDs, but they don't have common sense, and they don't have wisdom. Because Donald Trump's economic policies to deliver...
This guy's like a tour de force.
He's seeking missile.
1.5% inflation, and to boot, peace and security all over the world. So when people say that Donald Trump's economic plan doesn't make sense, I say look at the record. He delivered rising take-home pay for American workers. Now, Tim admirably admits that they want to undo the Trump tax cuts. But if you look at what was so different about Donald Trump's tax cuts, even from previous Republican tax cut plans, is that a lot of those resources went to giving more take-home pay to middle-class and working-class Americans. It was passed in 2017, and you saw an American economic boom unlike we've seen in a generation in this country. That is a record that I'm proud to run on, and we're going to get back to that common sense wisdom so that you can afford to live the American dream again. I know a lot of you are struggling. I know a lot of you are worried about paying the bills. It's going to stop when Donald Trump brings back common sense to this country.
Governor, do you want to respond to that? What has Kamala Harris done for the middle class?
Yeah, well, Kamala Harris's day one was Donald Trump's failure on COVID that led to the collapse of our economy. We were already before COVID in a manufacturing recession, but 10 million people out of work, largest percentage since the Great Depression. 9 million jobs closed on that. That was day one. Whether it was the Infrastructure Act or other things we moved. Now, you made a question about experts, said this. I've made a note of this. Economists can't be trusted. Science can't be trusted. National security folks can't be trusted. Look, if you're going to be president, you don't have all the answers. Donald Trump believes he does. My pro tip of the day is this. If you need heart surgery, listen to the people at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota, not Donald Trump. And the same thing goes with this. And I ask you out there,
what does that have anything to do?
Truck drivers, whatever. How is it fair that you're paying your taxes every year and Donald Trump hasn't paid any federal tax in the last 15 years? And the last year as president. That's what's wrong with the system. There's a way around it, and he's bragged about that. We're just asking for fairness in it, and that's all you want.
Governor, you say trust the experts. But those same experts for 40 years said that if we shipped our manufacturing base off to China, we'd get cheaper goods. They lied about that. They said if we shipped our industrial base off to other countries, to Mexico and elsewhere, it would make the middle class stronger. They were wrong about that. They were wrong about the idea that if we made America less self-reliant, less productive in our own nation, that it would somehow make us better off, and they were wrong about it. And for the first time in a generation, Donald Trump had the wisdom and the courage to say to that bipartisan consensus, we're not doing it anymore. We're bringing American manufacturing back. We're unleashing American energy. We're going to make more of our own stuff. And this isn't just an economic issue. And I've got 3 beautiful little kids at home, 7, 4, and 2, and I love them very much, and I hope they're in bed right now. But look, so many of the drugs, the pharmaceuticals that we put in the bodies of our children are manufactured by nations that hate us. This has to stop, and we're not going to stop it by listening to experts. We're going to stop it by listening to common sense wisdom, which is what Donald Trump governed on.
Senator, you're talking about Governor Walz. Can you address that? I mean, voters say they trust Donald Trump on the economy more. Why?
If you're listening tonight and you want billionaires to get tax cuts, you heard what the numbers were.
Vance makes the case for Trump's policies better than Trump does.
Yes, he does.
I'm not a guy who wanted to ship things overseas, but I understand that, look, we produce...
And he makes it more understandable to people who maybe are on the fence.
I think the thing that
this guy talks in circles.
Is Donald Trump was the guy who created the largest trade deficit in American history with China. So the rhetoric is good. Much of what the senator said right there, I'm in agreement with him on this. I watched it happen too. I watched it in my communities, and we talked about that. But we had people undercutting the right to collectively bargain. We had right to work states made it more difficult. We had companies that were willing to ship it over, and we saw people profit. Folks that are venture capital in some cases, putting money into companies that were overseas. We're in agreement that
Wall's eyes just got wacky.
The issue is Donald Trump is talking about.
Yeah.
He got lost for a second.
Yeah, but the average jerk isn't going to realize
out of
it.
the IRA.
May I respond to that?
Yes.
So I appreciate that. So if you notice, what Governor Walz just did is he said, first of all, Donald Trump has to listen to the experts. And then when he acknowledged that the experts screwed up, he said, well, Donald Trump didn't do nearly as good of a job as the statistics show that he did. So what Tim Walz is doing, and I honestly, Tim, I think you got a tough job here, because you've got to play whack-a-mole. You've got to pretend that Donald Trump didn't deliver rising take-home pay, which of course he did. You've got to pretend that Donald Trump didn't deliver
Come on.
Which of course he did.
Come on.
And then you simultaneously got to defend Kamala Harris's atrocious economic record, which has made gas, groceries, and housing unaffordable for American citizens. I was raised by a woman who would sometimes go into medical debt so that she could put food on the table in our household. I know what it's like to not be able to afford the things that you need to afford. We can do so much better. To all of you watching, we can get back to an America that's affordable again. We just got to get back to common sense
Tim's
economic
worried.
principles.
I hope we have a conversation on healthcare then.
Senator Governor.
Yeah.
Oh, good answer.
Yeah, let's steer
He goes,
this.
I got some stuff on
Good one.
healthcare.
Yeah, I got that. Yeah, insulin.
Good one.
Right now, I want to
Imagine being an independent voter, turning this debate on after hearing how
God.
Harris and them have categorized this guy as weird, and listening to the most eloquent, common sense, normal, could totally relate to
Governor Walz.
guy you've ever
You
heard.
said you were in Hong Kong during the deadly Tiananmen Square
Oh.
protest.
Oh, here we go.
Just came out on CNN.
But Minnesota Public Radio and other media outlets are reporting that you actually didn't travel to Asia until August of that year. Can you explain that discrepancy?
I'm shocked right now.
And to the folks out there who didn't get at the top of this, look, I grew up in small rural. Town that you
What?
ride with your buddies till the streetlights come on, and I'm proud of that service. I joined the National Guard at 17.
Okay.
Family farmed, and then I used the GI Bill to become a teacher, passionate about it, a young teacher. My first year, I had the opportunity.
Wow.
The lights got real bright for Tim Waltz just now.
He didn't see that one coming.
No, he did
I
not.
came back home
Who did that?
and then started a program to take young people there. We would take basketball teams, we would take baseball teams, we would take dancers. And we
Call
would go
911.
to China.
Dancers.
The issue for that was to try and learn. Now look, my community knows who I am. They saw where I was
That
at.
sounds
I hope
right.
Vance says, hey,
I will be the
Tim,
first
take
to
my
tell
minute
you,
to answer the
I
question
poured
this
my
time.
heart into my community. I've tried to do the best
you like to
I can,
respond?
but I've not been perfect. And I'm a knucklehead at times. But it's always been about that. Those same people elected me.
A knucklehead.
Wow.
JD's got a.
And in Congress, I was one of the most.
It's a body slam here.
Here,
Things
JD.
like farm bills that we got done.
Oh my goodness.
Softball.
Benefits. And then the people of Minnesota were able to elect me to governor twice. So look, my commitment has been from the beginning. To make sure
So maybe I lied about
Oh, this is brutal.
the most significant
He's
thing that
backpedaling.
ever happened in China.
Oh my God! Look at this.
And my
The Chinese
participation.
This is brutal.
But that's 'cause I'm a
What a
knucklehead.
question.
The difference it made.
That was loaded.
I learned a lot about China. I hear the critics of this. I would make the case that Donald Trump should have come on one of those trips with us.
Now it's Trump's fault.
Xi Jinping.
It's always Trump's fault.
And I guarantee you, he wouldn't start a trade war.
I'm a
against us.
knucklehead at times.
So this is about
That's the answer.
Yeah, that's who I want to vote for.
It's about trying to do the best
Oh.
you can for your community. And then
That's a
putting
t-shirt,
yourself
Big
out
D.
there and letting your folks understand what it is. My
Wow.
government, whether it be through teaching,
Wow.
which I was good at, or
What a
being
moment.
a good soldier, or was being a good member of Congress. Those are the things that I think are the values that people care about.
He's about to get
Here we go.
smashed.
Just to follow up on that, the question was, can you explain the
No,
discrepancy?
All I said on this was I got there that summer and misspoke on this. So I will just, that's what I've said.
That's not what you said.
So I was in Hong Kong and China during the democracy protests went in. And from that, I learned a lot of what needed to be in
I've never seen a career end in front of me.
Vance, in 2016,
Yeah, we'll see.
you called your running mate Donald Trump
Told you.
unfit for the nation's
JD's going
highest
right back to
office,
that.
And you said he
Oh,
would
no.
be America's
Can I just
Hitler.
make a comment?
I know you've said you've been asked
Can I respond to
many
that?
times, and you've said you regret
He should
those
praise his
comments.
service first and then whack him.
Then
Yeah.
voted for Donald Trump in 2020.
Yeah.
But the Washington Post reported new messages last week in which you also disparaged Trump's economic record while he was president, writing to someone in 2020, quote, Trump thoroughly failed to deliver.
This is his
economic
chance.
populism.
Credit him service and then
And you've shifted
and then
many
whack it.
policy stances to align with his.
he's got to
If
say
you
something
become
here.
Vice President, why should Americans trust that you will give Donald
This
Trump
is like
the
a
advice
3-minute
he
question.
needs to hear, and not just the advice he wants to hear? You have 2 minutes.
Well, first of all, Margaret, because I've always been open. And sometimes, of course, I've disagreed with the president, but I've also been extremely open about the fact that I was wrong about Donald Trump. I was wrong, first of all, because I believed some of the media
Guess he
stories
thinks that
turned
the
out to be
damage has already been done.
fabrications of his record. But most importantly, Donald Trump delivered for the American people. Rising wages, rising take-home pay, an economy that worked for normal Americans, a secure southern border, a lot of things, frankly, that I didn't think he'd be able to deliver on. And yeah, when you screw up, when you misspeak, when you get something wrong and you change your mind, you ought to be honest with the American people about it. It's one of the reasons, Margaret, why I've done so many interviews, is because I think it's important to actually explain to the American people where I come down on the issues and what changed. Now, you pointed out to messages from 2020. Margaret, I've been extremely consistent that I think there were a lot of things that we could have done better in the Trump administration in the first round if Congress was doing its job. I strongly believe, and I've been a United States Senator, that Congress is not just a high-class debating society. It's not just a forum for senators and congressmen to whine about problems. It's a forum to govern. So there were a lot of things on the border, on tariffs, for example, where I think that we could have done so much more if the Republican Congress and the Democrats in Congress had been a little bit better about how they govern the country. They were so obsessed with impeaching Donald Trump, they couldn't actually govern. And I want to talk about this tariff issue in particular, Margaret, because Tim just accused this of being a national sales tax. Look, the one thing, and you're probably surprised to hear me praising Joe Biden, but the one thing that Joe Biden did is he continued some of the Trump tariffs that protected American manufacturing jobs. And it's the one issue, the most pro-worker part of the Biden administration, it's the one issue where Kamala Harris has run away from Joe Biden's record. Think about this. If you're trying to employ slave laborers in China at $3 a day, you're going to do that and undercut the wages of American workers unless our country stands up for itself and says, you're not accessing our markets unless you're paying middle-class Americans a fair wage.
Senator, your time is up. Nora?
Thank you.
Masterful.
The issue of reproductive rights. Governor Walz, after Roe versus Wade was overturned, you signed a bill into law that made Minnesota one of the least restrictive states in the nation when it comes to abortion. Former President Trump said in the last debate that you believe abortion, quote, in the 9th month is absolutely fine. Yes or no? Is that what you support? I'll give you 2 minutes.
That's not what the bill says, but look, this issue is what's on everyone's mind. Donald Trump put this all into motion. He brags about how great it was that he put the judges in and overturned Roe versus Wade. 52 years of personal autonomy. And then he tells us, oh, send it to the states. It's a beautiful thing. Amanda Zaworski would disagree with you on it's a beautiful thing. A young bride in Texas waiting for their child at 18 weeks. She has a complication, a tear in the membrane. She needs to go in. The medical care at that point needs to be decided by the doctor. And that would have been an abortion. But in Texas, that would have put them in legal jeopardy. She went home, got sepsis, nearly dies, and now she may have difficulty having children. Or in Kentucky, Hadley Duvall, a 12-year-old child, raped and impregnated by her stepfather. Those are horrific. Now, when God asked about that, Senator Vance said 2 wrongs don't make a right. There is no right in this. So in Minnesota, what we did was restore Roe versus Wade. We made sure that we put women in charge of their health care. But look, this is not where, if you don't know Amanda or a Hadley, you soon will. Their Project 2025 is going to have a registry of pregnancies. It's going to make it more difficult, if not impossible, to get contraception and limit access, if not eliminate access to infertility treatments. For so many of you out there listening, me included, infertility treatments are why I have a child. That's nobody else's business.
I think
that was debunked.
That's not true. I don't think any of his kids were infertility treatment. I think that I don't think that's true.
No, it's not.
That's not how this works. This is basic human right. We have seen maternal mortality skyrocket in Texas, outpacing many other countries in the world. This is about health.
That is, I believe.
First in healthcare.
I'll leave the door open that I could be wrong, but I think that's a blatant lie.
Will you create a federal pregnancy monitoring agency?
No, Nora, certainly we won't. And I want to talk about this issue because I know a lot of Americans care about it, and I know a lot of Americans don't agree with everything that I've ever said on this topic. And, you know, I grew up in a working class family in a neighborhood where I knew a lot of young women who had unplanned pregnancies and decided to terminate those pregnancies because they feel like they didn't have any other options. And, you know, one of them is actually very dear to me. And I know she's watching tonight, and I love you. And she told me something a couple years ago that she felt like if she hadn't had that abortion, that it would have destroyed her life because she was in an abusive relationship. And I think that what I take from that as a Republican who proudly wants to protect innocent life in this country, who proudly wants to protect the vulnerable, is that my party, we've got to do so much better of a job at earning the American people's trust back on this issue where they frankly just don't trust us. And I think that's one of the things that Donald Trump and I are endeavoring to do. I want us as a Republican Party to be pro-family in the fullest sense of the word. I want us to support fertility treatments. I want us to make it easier for moms to afford to have babies. I want it to make it easier for young families to afford a home so they can afford a place to raise that family. And I think there's so much that we can do on the public policy front just to give women more options. Now, of course, Donald Trump has been very clear that on the abortion policy specifically, that we have a big country and it's diverse. And California has a different viewpoint on this than Georgia. Georgia has a different viewpoint from Arizona. And the proper way to handle this, as messy as democracy sometimes is to let voters make these decisions, let the individual states make their abortion policy, and I think that's what makes the most sense in a very big, a very diverse, and let's be honest, sometimes a very, very messy and divided country.
Governor, would you like to respond and also answer the question about restrictions?
Yeah, well, the question got asked, and Donald Trump made the accusation that wasn't true about Minnesota. Well, let me tell you about this idea that there's diverse states. There's a young woman named Amber Thurman. She happened to be in Georgia, a restricted state. Because of that, she had to travel a long distance to North Carolina to try and get her care. Amber Thurman died.
JD should just ask him,
Journey back and forth.
up to what month can they have an abortion under what you believe, Tim?
Say that your life and your
What are you comfortable with?
as basic as the right to
Wish he
control
would.
your own
Good question.
body is determined on geography. There's a very real chance had Amber Thurman lived in Minnesota, she would be alive today. That's why the restoration of Roe versus Wade. When you listen to Vice President Harris talk about this subject and you hear me talk about it, you hear us talking exactly the same. Donald Trump is trying to figure out how to get the political right of this. I agree with a lot of what Senator Vance said about what's happening. His running mate, though, does not, and that's the problem.
Governor, your time is up. Senator, let me ask you about that. He mentioned, it was, I think, referring to a national ban. In the past, you have supported a federal ban on abortion after 15 weeks. In fact, you said if someone can't support legislation like that, quote, you are making the United States the most barbaric pro-abortion regime anywhere in the entire world. My question is, why have you changed your position?
Well, Laura, first of all, I never supported a national ban. I did, during when I was running for Senate in 2022, talk about setting some minimum national standard. For example, we have a partial birth abortion ban in place in this country at the federal level. I don't think anybody's trying to get rid of that, or at least I hope not, though I know that Democrats have taken a very radical pro-abortion stance. But Nora, one of the things that changed is in the state of Ohio, we had a referendum in 2023, and the people of Ohio voted overwhelmingly, by the way, against my position. And I think that what I learned from that, Nora, is that we've got to do a better job at winning back people's trust. So many young women would love to have families. So many young women also see an unplanned pregnancy as something that's going to destroy their livelihood, destroy their education, destroy their relationships. And we have got to earn people's trust back. And that's why Donald Trump and I are committed to pursuing pro-family policies, making child care more accessible, making fertility treatments more accessible, because we've got to do a better job at that. And that's what real leadership is.
Governor, your response.
I'm going to respond on the pro-abortion piece of that. No, we're not. We're pro-women. We're pro-freedom to make your own choice. We know what the
break out the trans argument.
It's time for JD to ask him a couple things directly here.
Physicians feeling like they may be prosecuted for providing that care. And as far as making sure that we're educating our children and giving them options, Minnesota's a state with one of the lowest teen pregnancy rates. We understand that too. We know that the options need to be available, and we make that true. We also make it, we're a top 3 state for the best place to raise children. But these two things to try and say that we're pro-children, but we don't like this, or you guys are pro-abortion, that's not the case at all. We are pro-freedoms for women to make their choices, and we're going, and Kamala Harris is making the case, to make options for children more affordable, a $6,000 child tax credit, but we're not going to base that on the backs of making someone like Amber Thurman drive 600 miles to try and get health care.
Senator?
May I respond to that? First of all, Governor, I agree with you. Amber Thurman should still be alive, and there are a lot of people who should still be alive, and I certainly wish that she was. And maybe you're free to disagree with me on this and explain this to me, but as I read the Minnesota law that you signed into law, the statute that you signed into law, it says that a doctor who presides over an abortion where the baby survives, the doctor is under no obligation to provide life-saving care to a baby who survives a botched late-term abortion. That is, I think, whether you're pro-choice or pro-abortion, that is fundamentally barbaric. And that's why I use that word, Nora, is because some of what we've seen, do you want to force Catholic hospitals to perform abortions against their will? Because Kamala Harris has supported suing Catholic nuns to violate their freedom of conscience. We can be a big and diverse country where we respect people's freedom of conscience and make the country more pro-baby and pro-family. But please.
Yes, Governor, please respond.
Look, this is one where there's always something that this is a very simple proposition. These are women's decisions to make about their healthcare decisions, and the physicians who know best when they need to do this. Trying to distort the way a law is written to try and make a point, that's not it at all.
What was I wrong about, Governor? Please tell me, what was I wrong about?
That is not the way the law is written. Look, I've given this advice on a lot of things, that getting involved, that's been misread. It was fact-checked at the last debate. But the point on this is there's a continuation of these guys to try and tell women or to get involved. I use this line on this, just mind your own business on this. Things worked best when Roe versus Wade was in place. When we do a restoration of Roe, that works best. That doesn't preclude us from increasing funding for children. It doesn't increase us from making sure that once that child's born, like in Minnesota, they get meals, they get early childhood education, they get health care. So that hiding behind we're going to do all these other things when you're not proposing them in your budget, Kamala Harris is proposing them. She's proposing all those things to make life easier for families.
I asked a specific question, Governor. You gave me a slogan as a response.
It's not the case. It's not true. That's not what the law says. So they fact-checked it with President Trump.
Gentlemen, there's a lot to discuss. We have to move on. And we're going to be right back with much more of the CBS News vice presidential debate in just a moment.
Whoa. I'm going to run to the bathroom. Anybody need a tampon?
I got to take off.
I will. I'll go first. I think this is one of the more extraordinary performances in a debate we've ever seen. From J.D. Vance. I mean, I think it's a tour de force so far.
Yep.
An absolute tour de force. I think it's one of the great performances we've ever seen. I mean, Waltz is so outmatched. J.D. Vance right now is disarming, but yet so effective in making Trump's policies understandable to the normie voter out there who might be independent, might be on the fence. They are listening to this guy tonight and going, okay, I can totally relate to this guy. Imagine, again, I say, turning on the TV tonight after hearing how this guy has been categorized from Kamala Harris and Tim Waltz and every Democrat talking head about weird this, weird that, and listening to him tonight, the most relatable, normal, articulate, smart, well put together guy you could ever imagine listening to.
And you know what? I think for the first time, a presidential debate might actually have bearing on the election. I mean, remember when Lloyd Benson knocked out the guy who can't spell potato?
Dan Quayle.
There you go. Dan Quayle. It didn't really. He said Bush still won. Bush still won there. But this one, like you said, he's explaining it so people can get it. He's also making Waltz look like a fool.
Well, I think Waltz did that to himself.
Yeah,
that's the question about you being in Tiananmen Square, and he went.
That was a lot of words. Yeah, that was a whole lot of words to just say. Yeah, I lied about it, which is what he should have just said.
Yeah,
which he basically did say.
But he lied about lying about it.
Yes,
like he wouldn't tell you the truth. He wouldn't say I lied about it and admit that he got caught. He tried to cover up that lie with more lies.
Yep.
About, well, it was because of this and because of that, and I was actually was a young man at the time, and then I was doing whippets and with Harvey down the street while we were
I was a knucklehead.
Getting ready to start teaching kids and get these kids ready to never go to Harvard because I'm not that good of a teacher.
Yeah.
And I suck as a coach.
You know what? I'm wondering now if this isn't if they're not doing to Walz what they did to Biden. Maybe they're going to do a last minute switcheroo and go with Josh Shapiro.
I don't know if they
know
can get him
she's
out.
sinking in PA.
I don't think they can get him out.
And what J.D. Vance was just talking about, that law in Minnesota, he's absolutely right. It's exactly what the law says, which is why Waltz had no answer. that whole fact check, whatever. I mean, JD, I think if there's one thing he could have done, he probably could have pushed that a little more directly to him. He tried. He said, well, tell me where it's wrong. What specifically?
Mm-hmm. And he said nothing.
He said nothing.
Because he's lying. He's absolutely lying. Vance is pulling him apart.
I mean, man.
I'm a knucklehead.
I'm a knucklehead sometimes.
I told you there's going to be a few of those moments, and thank you, Tim Walz. You just gave us probably the number one. I'm a knucklehead sometimes.
Yeah.
Really, do you want a vice president who says he's a knucklehead sometimes?
Yeah,
not really.
He's probably thinking right now, everyone's going, I'm a knucklehead sometimes too. I think I'll vote for him though. That was such a poor choice of words.
Yeah, you don't want the knuckleheads to be in charge.
I mean, outside the abortion thing, where I do think he could have. I think he maybe let him off the hook a little bit there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
because Walz had really no answer to exactly what is going on in Minnesota. This is his. I mean, it's his. He's even, I don't know. I think he's even better than I knew he'd be good.
Yeah.
Absolutely knew he'd be good. Knew that this could end up, as I said, a better than 50-50 chance that Walz actually has not really, Walz is much better than Kamala Harris.
Yeah.
He was very shaky to start. He definitely stabilized, but it's just another level. He's just not on the level. I mean, it's not even that Walz has been, I mean, the question from Margaret Brennan is really the big Walz blunder tonight. If he face plants, it's on that question.
Yeah.
I mean, his answers are, junior high school level answers compared to Vance. We're back here.
The leading cause of death for children and teens in America is by firearms. Senator Vance, you oppose most gun legislation that Democrats claim would curb gun violence.
Yeah, that's not true.
You oppose red flag gun laws.
That only works if you take out toddlers and add 18 and 19-year-olds who are adults.
Earlier this year, for the first time, the parents of a school shooter were convicted of involuntary manslaughter and sentenced to 10 years in prison. Do you think holding parents responsible could curb mass shootings? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Yeah, well, Laura, on that particular case, I don't know the full details, but I certainly trust local law enforcement and local authorities to make those decisions. I think in some cases the answer is going to be yes, and in some cases the answer is going to be no. And the details really matter here, of course. For example, if a kid steals a gun, that's going to be different than if a parent hands over a gun knowing that their kid is potentially dangerous. But look, I want to just sort of speak as a father of 3 beautiful little kids, and our oldest is now in 2nd grade. And like a lot of parents, we send our kids to school with such hope and such joy and such pride at their little faces on the first day of school. And we know, unfortunately, that a lot of kids are going to experience this terrible epidemic of gun violence. And of course, our hearts go out to the families that are affected by this terrible stuff. And we do have to do better. And I think that Governor Walz and I actually probably agree that we need to do better on this. The question is just how do we actually do it? Now, here's something that really bothers me and worries me about this epidemic of violence. The gross majority, close to 90% in some of the statistics I've seen, of the gun violence in this country is committed with illegally obtained firearms.
Aaron, he's going anyway, so don't worry about that shot.
Thanks to Kamala Harris's open border, we've seen a massive influx in the number of illegal guns.
Wave good night,
Delgado.
Delgado.
Mexican drug cartel. So that number, the amount of illegal guns in our country is higher today than it was 3.5 years ago. But what do we do about the schools? What do we do to protect our kids? And I think the answer is, and I say this not loving the answer, because I don't want my kids to go to school in a school that feels unsafe or where there are visible signs of security. But I unfortunately think that we have to increase security in our schools. We have to make the doors lock better. We have to make the doors stronger. We've got to make the windows stronger. And of course, we've got to increase school resource officers, because the idea that we can magically wave a wand and take guns out of the hands of bad guys, it just doesn't fit with recent experience. So we've got to make our schools safer. And I think we've got to have some common sense bipartisan solutions for how to do that.
Governor, you have 2 minutes.
Well, I think all the parents watching tonight, this is your biggest nightmare. Look, I got a 17-year-old, and he witnessed a shooting at a community center playing volleyball. Those things don't leave you. As a member of Congress, I sat in my office surrounded by dozens of the Sandy Hook parents, and they were looking at my 7-year-old picture on the wall. Their 7-year-old were dead, and they were asking us to do something. And look, I'm a hunter. I own firearms. The Vice President is. We understand that the Second Amendment is there, but our first responsibility is to our kids to figure this out. In Minnesota, we've enacted enhanced red flag laws, enhanced background checks. and we can start to get data. But here's the problem. If we really want to solve this, we've got folks that won't allow research to be even done on gun violence. And this idea that we should just live with it, and here's what I do think, that this is a good start to the conversation. I 100% believe that Senator Vance hates it when these kids, it's abhorrent and it breaks your heart. I agree with that. But that's not far enough when we know there are things that work. I've spent time in Finland and seen some Finnish schools. They don't have this happen, even though they have a high gun
Here we go.
ownership
We're going to
rate.
compare apples and grapefruits
There are
now.
reasonable
They
things
do all
that
the time.
we can do to make a difference. It's not infringing on your Second Amendment. And the idea to have some of these weapons out there, it just doesn't make any sense. Kamala Harris, as an attorney general, worked on this issue. She knows that it's there. No one's trying to scaremonger and say we're taking your guns, but I ask all of you out there, do you want your schools hardened to look like a fort? Is that what we have to go? When we know there's countries around the world that their children aren't practicing these types of drills. They're being kids. We owe it to them to get a fix. These are things that shouldn't be that difficult. You can still keep your firearms and we can make a difference. We have to. If you're listening tonight, this breaks your heart.
Senator.
Tim, first of all, I didn't know that your 17-year-old witnessed a shooting. I'm sorry about that, and I appreciate it. Okay, Christ have mercy. It is awful. And I appreciate what Tim said actually about Finland, because I do think it illustrates some of the frankly weird differences between our own country's gun violence problem and Finland. Okay, first of all, we have way higher rates of mental health abuse or mental health substance abuse. We have way higher rates of depression, way higher rates of anxiety. We unfortunately have a mental health crisis in this country that I really do think that we need to get to the root causes of, because I don't think it's the whole reason why we have such a bad gun violence problem, but I do think it's a big piece of it. Another driver of the gun violence epidemic, especially that affecting our kids, it doesn't earn as many headlines, but is the terrible gun violence problem in a lot of our big cities. And this is why we have to empower law enforcement to arrest the bad guys, put them away, and take gun offenders off the streets. I think there's a whole host of things that we can do here, but I do think at our schools we've got to talk about more security.
Senator, thank you. Governor, you previously opposed an assault weapons ban, but if only later in your political career did you change your position. Why?
Yeah, I sat in that office with those San Diego parents. I've become friends with school shooters. I've seen it. Look, the NRA, I was an NRA guy for a long time. They used to teach gun safety. I'm of an age where my shotgun was in my car so I could pheasant hunt after football.
Say I become friends with school shooters?
That's not where we live today. And several things I want to mention on this is, talking about cities and where it's at, the number one where the most firearm deaths happen in Minnesota are rural suicides. And we have an epidemic of children getting guns and shooting themselves. And so we have, and we should look at all of the issues. Making sure folks have health care and all that, but I want to be very careful. This idea of stigmatizing mental health, just because you have a mental health issue doesn't mean you're violent. And I think what we end up doing is we start looking for a scapegoat. Sometimes it just is the guns. It's just the guns. And there are things that you can do about it. But I do think that this is one, and I think this is a healthy conversation. I think there's a capacity to find solutions on this that work, protect Second Amendment, protect our children. That's our priority.
Gentlemen, thank you. Margaret?
Thank you, Nora. Let's turn now to the top contributor to inflation, the high cost of housing and rent. There's a shortage of more than 4 million homes in the United States, and that contributes to the high housing prices. Governor Walz, the Harris campaign promises a $25,000 down payment assistance for first-time home buyers and a $10,000 tax credit. They also promise to build 3 million new homes. Where are you building these homes, and won't handing out that kind of money just drive
I think you were right.
He did.
No, it's not handing out. We have
I asked the audience.
this issue of housing.
I become friends with school shooters.
Yeah.
The problem we've had is
Interesting quote.
that we've
Very.
got a lot of folks that see housing as another commodity.
Knucklehead.
It can be bought up, it can be shifted, it can be moved around. Those are not folks living in those houses. Those of you listening tonight, that house is a big deal. I bought and owned one house in my life. My mom still lives in the house where I was. And when I think of a house, I'm thinking of Christmas services after midnight mass where you go with your family. We need to make it more affordable. And one of the things, as I said, this program that the Vice President is pushing forward and bringing a new way of approaching this is something we're doing in Minnesota from that lead. We in the state invested in making sure our housing was the biggest investment that we'd ever made in housing. It starts to make it easier. We cut some of the red tape. Local folks, look, we can't do it at the federal level, but local folks make it easier to build those homes. And then that down payment assistance. I can tell all of you out there, certainly for me, using the GI Bill was one thing, but a veteran's home loan, the big thing about a veteran's home loan is you don't have to pay the down payment. Those are things that make it different. Now look, you're going to pay it back, and you're going to pay your mortgage. Those are things that we know in the long run, the appreciated value, the generational wealth that's created from it. And I will give Minneapolis an example. Minneapolis is the one city where we've seen the lowest inflation rates. We've seen a 12% increase in stock because we put some of these things in, and we're implementing a state program to make sure we get some of that down payment assistance. We get it back from people because here's what we know. People with stable housing end up with stable jobs. People with stable housing have their kids able to get to school. All of those things in the long run end up saving our money. And that's the thing that I think we should be able to find some common ground in, but we can't blame immigrants for the only reason. That's not the case that's happening in many cities. The fact of the matter is that we don't have enough naturally affordable housing, but we can make sure that the government's there to help kickstart it, create that base.
Governor, your time is up. Senator Vance, as far as your campaign's position, the promise is to seize federal lands to build homes, remove regulation, provide tax breaks, and cut back on immigration, which you say pushes up prices. Where are you going to build all the new homes you're promising, and what part of any of this plan will provide?
Oh, God, the moderators are so
You have 2 minutes.
awful.
First of all,
as expected,
Tim just
though.
said something that I agree with. We don't want to blame immigrants for higher housing prices, but we do want to blame Kamala Harris for letting in millions of illegal aliens into this country, which does drive up costs, Tim. 25 million illegal aliens competing with Americans for scarce homes is one of the most significant drivers of home prices in the country. It's why we have massive increases in home prices that have happened right alongside massive increases in illegal alien populations under Kamala Harris's leadership. Now, Tim just mentioned a bunch of ideas. Now, some of those ideas I actually think are halfway decent, and some of them I disagree with, but the most important thing here is Kamala Harris is not running as a newcomer to politics. She is the sitting vice president. If she wants to enact all of these policies to make housing more affordable, I invite her to use the office that the American people already gave her, not sit around and campaign and do nothing while Americans find the American dream of homeownership completely unaffordable. Now, you asked, Margaret, what would immediately change the equation for American citizens? If you lower energy prices, as Donald Trump says, drill baby drill, one of the biggest drivers of housing costs aside from illegal immigration is, think about it, if a truck driver is paying 40% more for diesel, then the lumber he's delivering to the job site to build a house is also going to become a lot more expensive. If we open up American energy, you will get immediate pricing relief for American citizens, not, by the way, just in housing, but in a whole host of other economic goods too.
Senator Vance, you still have 23 seconds there. Do you want to answer?
Can I have it?
Governor, we will get to you in a moment. But Senator, where are you going to seize the federal lands? Can you clarify?
Well, what Donald Trump has said is we have a lot of federal lands that aren't being used for anything. They're not being used for national park. They're not being used, and they could be places where we build a lot of housing. And I do think that we should be opening up building in this country. We have a lot of land that could be used. We have a lot of Americans that need homes. We should be kicking out illegal immigrants who are competing for those homes, and we should be building more homes for the American citizens who deserve to be here.
Senator, your time is up. Governor, I do want to let you respond to the allegation that the Vice President is letting in.
Well, of course, that's not true. And again, you have the facts. I guess we agreed not to fact check. I'll check it. That, look, crossings are down compared to when Donald Trump left office. But it's, again, blaming and not trying to find the solution. I was going to ask, though, on this question, are we going to drill and build houses in the same federal land? And I think when people hear federal lands, these are really important pieces of land. Now, Minnesota doesn't have a lot of federal lands. I know in the western part of the country we do. There's not a lot of federal lands in and around Minneapolis, for example. So the issue is I don't understand the federal lands issue unless we see this, and I worry about this as someone who cares deeply about our national parks and our federal lands. Look, Minnesota, we protect these things. We've got about 20% of the world's fresh water. These lands protect. They're there for a reason. They belong to all of us. But again, this is when you view housing and you view these things as commodities. Like, there's a chance to make money here. Let's take this federal land and let's sell it to people for that. I think there's better ways to do this. We've seen it in Minnesota. We're able to refurbish some of these houses. We're able to make some investments. That gets people in. And I'm still on the fact on this. Economists, Senator Vance, you said you don't like the economists. Which economists are saying that it is immigrants that's adding to the cost?
Governor, your time is up. But Senator, on that point, I'd like for you to clarify. There are many contributing factors to high housing costs. What evidence do you have?
Love how these moderators reload the question when they ask Vance for a follow-up, and then when they ask him, it's just like totally different.
Yeah.
We'll put it up on social media.
It's true.
Actually, that really drills down on the connection between increased levels of migration, especially illegal immigration, and higher housing prices. Now, of course, Margaret, that's not the entire driver of higher housing prices. It's also the regulatory regime of Kamala Harris. Look, we are a country of builders. We're a country of doers. We're a country of explorers. But we increasingly have a federal administration that makes it harder to develop our resources, makes it harder to build things, and wants to throw people in jail for not doing everything exactly as Kamala Harris says they have to do. And what that means is that you have a lot of people who would love to build homes who aren't able to build homes. I actually agree with Tim Walz. We should get out of this idea of housing as a commodity. But the thing that has most turned housing into a commodity is giving it away to millions upon millions of people who have no legal right to be here.
What are the federal regulations? I deal with this as a governor.
You can very quickly reply.
I'm sorry. I get this as a governor, and I don't necessarily disagree with that. That in some cases, many of those are local, many of them are state. I don't know which ones are federal, but I think whenever we talk regulations, people think they can get rid of them. I think you want to be able to get out of your house in a fire. I think you want to make sure that it's fireproof and those types of things. So which are the regulations? Because the vice president's not responsible for those. Congress writes those.
Governor, thank you. Gentlemen, we have a lot to get to. You're passionate about the housing crisis, I can tell. But Nora?
Thank you. One of the top problems facing Americans is the high cost of health care. Senator Vance, at the last presidential debate, former President Trump was asked about replacing the Affordable Care Act. In response, he said, "I have concepts of a plan." Since then, Senator, you've talked about changing how chronically ill Americans get health insurance. Can you explain how that would work? And can you guarantee that Americans with pre-existing conditions won't pay more? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Well, of course, we're going to cover Americans with pre-existing conditions. In fact, a lot of my family members have gotten health care. I believe, members of my family actually got private health insurance, at least for the first time, switched off of Medicaid onto private insurance for the first time under Donald Trump's leadership. And I think that, a lot of people have criticized this concepts of a plan remark. It's very simple common sense. I think as Tim Walz knows from 12 years in Congress, you're not going to propose a 900-page bill standing on a debate stage. It would bore everybody to tears, and it wouldn't actually mean anything because part of this is the give and take of bipartisan negotiation. Now, when Donald Trump was actually president, and again, he has a record to be proud of, prescription drugs fell in 2018 for the first time in a very long time. Under Kamala Harris's leadership, prescription drugs are up about 7%. Under Donald Trump's entire 4 years, they were up about 1.5%. He introduced pricing transparency. Think about healthcare. You go into a hospital, you try to buy something, and nobody knows what it actually costs. That price transparency will actually give American consumers a little bit more choice and will also drive down costs. And we talked about, the reinsurance regulations is what I was talking about. Look, Donald Trump has said that if we allow states to experiment a little bit on how to cover both the chronically ill but the non-chronically ill, it's not just a plan. He actually implemented some of these regulations when he was president of the United States. And I think you can make a really good argument that it salvaged Obamacare, which was doing disastrously until Donald Trump came along. And I think this is an important point about President Trump. Of course, you don't have to agree with everything that President Trump has ever said or ever done, but when Obamacare was crushing under the weight of its own regulatory burden and healthcare costs, Donald Trump could have destroyed the program. Instead, he worked in a bipartisan way to ensure that Americans had access to affordable care. It's not perfect, of course, and there's so much more that we could do, but I think that Donald Trump has earned the right to put in place some better healthcare policies. He's earned it because he did it successfully the first time.
Governor?
All right, here's where being an old guy gives you some history. I was there at the creation of the ACA. And the reason it was so important is I come from a major healthcare state home of the Mayo Clinic, home to Medical Alley, 3M, Medtronic, all of those. We understand healthcare. It's why we're ranked first on affordability and accessibility and quality of healthcare. And so what I know is under Kamala Harris, more people are covered than they have before. Those of you listening, this is critical to you. Now, Donald Trump all of a sudden wants you. Go back and remember this. He ran on the first thing he was going to do on day one was to repeal Obamacare. On day one, he tried to sign an executive order to repeal the ACA. He signed on to a lawsuit to repeal the ACA, but lost at the Supreme Court. And he would have repealed the ACA had it not been for the courage of John McCain to save that bill. Now, fast forward, what that means to you is you lose your pre-existing conditions. If you're sitting at home and you got asthma, too bad. If you're a woman, probably not. Broke your foot during football, might kick you out. Your kids get kicked out when they're 26. Kamala Harris negotiated drug prices for the first time with Medicare. We have 10 drugs that will come online, the most common ones that'll be there. But look, this issue, and when Donald Trump said, I got a concept of a plan, it cracked me up as a fourth grade teacher because my kids would have never given me that. But what Senator Vance just explained might be worse than a concept, because what he explained is pre-Obamacare. And I'll make this as simple as possible because I have done this for a long time. What they're saying is, if you're healthy, why should you be paying more? So what they're going to do is let insurance companies pick who they insure, because guess what happens? You pay your premium, it's not much. They figure they're not going to have to pay out to you. But those of you a little older, gray, got cancer, you're going to get kicked out of it. That's why the system didn't work. Kamala Harris will protect and enhance the ACA.
Governor, thank you. Senator, you have not yet explained how you would protect people with pre-existing conditions.
Not explained, Damon.
Well, look, we currently have the laws and regulations in place right now that protect people with pre-existing conditions. We want to keep those regulations in place, but we also want to make the health insurance marketplace function a little bit better. Now, what Governor Walz just said is actually not true. A lot of what happened, and the reason that Obamacare was crushing under its own weight, is that a lot of young and healthy people were leaving the exchanges. Donald Trump actually helped address that problem, and he did so in a way that preserved people's access to coverage who had pre-existing conditions. But again, something that these guys do is they make a lot of claims about if Donald Trump becomes president, all of these terrible consequences are going to ensue. Yep. But in reality, Donald Trump was president, inflation was low, take-home pay was higher, and he saved the very program from a Democratic administration that was collapsing and would have collapsed absent his leadership. He did his job, which is govern in a bipartisan way and get results, not just complain about problems, but actually solve them.
Governor, did enrollment under the Affordable Care Act go up under the Trump administration?
It's higher now that we've seen it go up. Look, people are using it. The system works. And the question about this, of young people or whatever, that's the individual mandate piece of this. And Republicans fought tooth and nail saying, well, Americans should be free to do this. Well, then
so you think the individual mandate's a good idea?
You should. I think the idea of making sure the risk pool is broad enough to cover everyone, that's the only way insurance works. When it doesn't, it collapses. You are asking pre-ACA where we get people out. Look, people know that they need to be on health care. People expect it to be there. And when we are able to make it, and we are making it this way, when we incentivize people to be in the market, when we help people who might not be able to afford it get there, and we make sure then when you get sick and old, it's there for you. Because I heard people say, well, I don't want to buy into Medicare or whatever. Good luck buying health care once you get past 70. So look, the ACA works. We can continue to do better. Kamala Harris did that. The way she made everything better was negotiating those 10 drugs on Medicare for the first time in American history.
Thank you. Margaret?
Can I
I apologize. We're out of time. We have a number of subjects to discuss. Margaret?
Let's talk about families in America. There is a child care crisis in this country, and the United States is one of the very few developed countries in the world without a national paid leave program for new parents. Governor Walz, you said that if Democrats win both the White House and Congress, this is a day one priority for you. How long should employers be required to pay workers while they are home taking care of their newborns? You have 2 minutes.
Yeah, well, that's negotiable, and that's what Congress worked. But here's what the deal is. Americans sitting out there right now, you may work for a big company. We're home in Minnesota to some of the largest Fortune 500 companies. Kamala Harris knows that in California. Those companies provide paid family medical leave. One is, I think they're moral and they think it's a good thing, but it also keeps their employees healthy. We in Minnesota passed a paid family medical leave. You have a child, and I had to go back to work 5 days after my kids were born. This allows you to stay home a certain amount of time. What we know is that gets the child off to a better start, the family works better, we stay in their employers, we get more consistency in that. So Kamala Harris has made it a priority. We implemented it in Minnesota and we see growth. That's how you become a pro-business state. But the negotiations on it, and here's the issue, those big companies are able to offer it. Those of you out there who don't have it, just imagine what happens if you get cancer or your child gets sick. We know what happens. You end up staying home. In some places, that means no paycheck because you've got no protection on that. This is the case of an economy that Donald Trump has set for the wealthiest amongst us. He's willing to give those tax breaks to the wealthiest. He's willing to say, bust those unions up, do whatever. What we're saying is the economy works best when it works for all of us. And so a paid family medical leave program, and I will tell you, go to the families or go to the businesses and ask them. As far as childcare on this, you have to take it at both the supply and the demand side. You can't expect the most important people in our lives to take either our children or our parents to get paid the least amount of money. And we have to make it easier for folks to be able to get into that business and then to make sure that folks are able to pay for that. We were able to do it in Minnesota, and I'm still telling you this. We were listed as the best state. We're still in crisis on this. A federal program of paid family medical leave and help with this will enhance our workforce, enhance our families, and make it easier to have the children that you want.
Governor, your time is up. Senator, do you support a national paid leave program? And if so, for how long should employers be mandated to pay their employees while they are home taking care of their newborn? You have 2 minutes.
Yeah, well, first of all, Margaret, a number of my Republican colleagues and some Democrats, too, have worked on this issue. And I think there is a bipartisan solution here because a lot of us care about this issue. I mean, look, I speak from this very personally because I'm married to a beautiful woman who is an incredible mother to our 3 beautiful kids, but is also a very, very brilliant corporate litigator. And I'm so proud of her. But being a working mom, even for somebody with all of the advantages of my wife, is extraordinarily difficult. And it's not just difficult from a policy perspective. She actually had access to paid family leave because she worked for a bigger company. But the cultural pressure on young families, and especially young women, I think makes it really hard for people to choose the family model they want. A lot of young women would like to go back to work immediately. Some would like to spend a little time home with the kids. Some would like to spend longer at home with the kids. We should have a family care model that makes choice possible. And I think this is a very important substantive difference between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris's approach. I mean, look, if you look at the federal programs that we have that support paid family leave right now, the Community Development Block Grant, and there's another block grant program that spends a lot of money from the federal government. These programs only go to one kind of child care model. Let's say you'd like your church maybe to help you out with child care. Maybe you live in a rural area or an urban area and you'd like to get together with families in your neighborhood to provide child care in the way that makes the most sense. You don't get access to any of these federal monies. We want to promote choice in how we deliver family care and how we promote child care because, look, it is unacceptable. And, you know, of course, Tim and I have been on the campaign trail a lot the past 7 or 8 weeks, and one of the biggest complaints I hear from young families is people who feel like they don't have options, like they're choosing between going to work or taking care for their kids. That is an incredible burden to put on American families. We're the only country that does it. I think we could do a heck of a lot better.
Senator, thank you. You have also said, Senator Vance, many things about the American family. The Federal Reserve says parents will spend nearly as much on child care as they do on housing each month. So I want to get your thoughts on this. President Trump recently said, as much as child care is talked about as being expensive, it's relatively speaking not very expensive compared to the kinds of numbers we'll be taking in. If President Trump committed to the $5,000 per child tax credit that you have described, you have 1 minute.
Well, what President Trump said, Margaret, I just want to defend my running mate here a little bit, is that we're going to be taking in a lot of money by penalizing companies for shipping jobs overseas and penalizing countries who employ slave laborers and then ship their products back into our country and undercut the wages of American workers. It's the heart of the Donald Trump economic plan. cut taxes for American workers and American families, cut taxes for businesses that are hiring and building companies in the United States of America, but penalize companies and countries that are shipping jobs overseas. That's the heart of the economic proposal. And I think what President Trump is saying is that when we bring in this additional revenue with higher economic growth, we're going to be able to provide paid family leave, child care options that are viable and workable for a lot of American families.
Can you clarify how that will solve the child care shortage?
Well, because as Tim said, a lot of the child care shortage is we just don't have enough resources going into the multiple people who could be providing family care options. And we're going to have to, unfortunately, we're going to have to spend more money. We're going to have to induce more people to want to provide child care options for American families, because the reason it's so expensive right now is because you've got way too few people providing this very essential service.
Thank you, Senator. Governor Walz, your ticket also has some child care tax credit proposals. Do you think Congress will agree to the $6,000 credit for newborns and $3,000 credit for children over the age of 6, as your campaign has promised? Is that realistic?
Well, if these members of Congress are listening to anybody, I can tell you, and this is the biggest issue. Everybody listening tonight knows. I mean, I'm sure they were shocked to hear it's not that expensive. And let's be clear, whether it's $5,000 or $6,000, that leaves you about 3 or 4 months. Let's be clear where we're at on this. It's because we got out of an imbalance on this. We thought we were going to get by not paying people. I don't think Senator Vance and I are that far apart. I'm not opposed to what he's talking about on options. We've done scholarship types of things. I think we need to be open to making the case. But the issue here is, the question you ask is, you're not going to pay for it with these tariffs. That's just adding another $4,000 on the family and taking less. So not only do they not get the money to pay for that, they're $4,000 in the hole. That's Wharton School. That's his alma mater. And so I think the issue here is, if those members of Congress, I can't believe they're not. When I go to businesses, sure, they'll talk about taxes sometime, but they will lead with childcare and they will lead with housing, because we know the problem is, especially in a state like Minnesota, we need more workers because our economy's growing, but we need the workforce.
Governor, thank you. We need to move on. Nora?
Let's talk about the state of democracy, the top issue for Americans after the economy and inflation. After the 2020 election, President Trump's campaign and others filed 62 lawsuits contesting the results.
Yeah, this is really on the front of people's minds.
Those appointed by President Trump and other Republican presidents looked at the evidence and said there was no widespread fraud. The governors of every state in the nation, Republicans and
Do you believe we're going to spend time on this in the 2024 vice presidential debate?
No.
We're going to go back to 2020 now.
To Congress for January 6th. Senator Vance,
What a
you have
waste.
said you would not have certified the last presidential election and would have asked the states to submit alternative electors. That has been called unconstitutional and illegal. Would you again seek
What a
to
hack.
challenge this year's election?
Total
results?
hack.
I don't like her at all, this one here.
Governor certifies the results.
Unconstitutional. It's been done before.
Laura, first of all, I think that we're focused on the future. We need to figure out how to solve
Exactly.
the
There you go.
inflation
You just said that.
caused by Kamala Harris's policies, make housing affordable, make groceries affordable, and that's what we're focused on. But I want to answer your question because you did ask it. Look, what President Trump has said is that there were problems in 2020, and my own belief is that we should fight about those issues, debate those issues peacefully in the public square, and that's all I've said, and that's all that Donald Trump has said. Remember, he said that on January the 6th, the protesters ought to protest peacefully. And on January the 20th, what happened? Joe Biden became the president, Donald Trump left the White House, and now, of course, unfortunately, we have all of the negative policies that have come from the Harris-Biden administration. I believe that we actually do have a threat to democracy in this country, but unfortunately, it's not the threat to democracy that Kamala Harris and Tim Walz want to talk about. It is the threat of censorship. It's Americans casting aside lifelong friendships because of disagreements over politics. It's big technology companies silencing their fellow citizens. And it's Kamala Harris saying that rather than debate and persuade her fellow Americans, she'd like to censor people who engage in misinformation. I think that is a much bigger threat to democracy than anything that we've seen in this country in the last 4 years, in the last 40 years. Now, I'm really proud, especially given that I was raised by two lifelong blue-collar Democrats, to have the endorsement of Bobby Kennedy Kennedy Jr. and Tulsi Gabbard, lifelong leaders in the Democratic coalition. And of course, they don't agree with me and Donald Trump on every issue. We don't have to agree on every issue, but we're united behind a basic American First Amendment principle that we ought to debate our differences. We ought to argue about them. We ought to try to persuade our fellow Americans. Kamala Harris is engaged in censorship at an industrial scale. She did it during COVID. She's done it over a number of other issues, and that to me is a much bigger threat to democracy than what Donald Trump said when he said that protesters should peacefully protest on January the 6th.
Governor?
Well, I've enjoyed tonight's debate, and I think there was a lot of commonality here, and I'm sympathetic to misspeaking on things, and I think I might have with the senator. But
Me too, man.
There's one though that this one is troubling to me, and I say that because I think we need to tell the story. Donald Trump refused to acknowledge this, and the fact is that I don't think we can be the frog in the pot and let the boiling water go up. He was very clear. I mean, he lost this election, and he said he didn't. 140 police officers were beaten at the Capitol that day. Some with the American flag. Several later died, and it wasn't just in there. In Minnesota,
several later died.
Grounds in St. Paul, and said we're marching to the governor's residence, and there may be casualties. The only person there was my son and his dog, who was rushed out crying by state police. That issue, and Mike Pence standing there as they were chanting, "Hang Mike Pence." Mike Pence made the right decision. So, Senator, it was adjudicated over and over and over. I worked with kids long enough to know, and I said as a football coach, sometimes you really want to win, but the democracy is bigger than winning an election. You shake hands, and then you try and do everything you can to help the other side win. That's what was at stake here. Now, the thing I'm most concerned about is the idea that imprisoning your political opponents, already laying the groundwork for people not accepting this.
What?
And a president's words matter. A president's words matter. People hear that. So I think this issue of settling our differences at the ballot box, shaking hands
right now,
lose, being honest about it, but to deny what happened on January 6th, the first time in American history that a president or anyone...
Watch the moderators jump in here. Well, we're out of time.
Yeah, whoa, got to go to commercial.
Because JD should be jumping on that. He's worried about imprisoning your political opponents? Hello?
This is over. We need to shake hands this election.
Got to get this.
And the winner needs to be the winner. This has got to stop. It's tearing our country apart.
Margaret? Senator Vance, did you want to respond to that?
Yeah, well, look, Tim, first of all, it's really rich for Democratic leaders to say that Donald Trump is a unique threat to democracy when he peacefully gave over power on January the 20th, as we have done for 250 years in this country. We're going to shake hands after this debate and after this election. And of course, I hope that we win, and I think we're going to win. But if Tim Walz is the next vice president, he'll have my prayers, he'll have my best wishes, and he'll have my help whenever he wants it. But we have to remember that for years in this country, Democrats protested the results of elections. Hillary Clinton in 2016 said that Donald Trump had the election stolen by Vladimir Putin because the Russians bought like $500,000 worth of Facebook ads. This has been going on for a long time. And if we want to say that we need to respect the results of the election, I'm on board. But if we want to say, as Tim Walz is saying, that this is just a problem that Republicans have had, I don't buy that.
Governor.
January 6th was not Facebook ads. And I think revisionist history on this. Look, I don't understand how we got to this point. But the issue was that happened. Donald Trump, can you do it? And all of us say there's no place for this. It has massive repercussions. This idea that there's censorship to stop people from threatening to kill someone, threatening to do something, that's not censorship. Censorship is book banning. We've seen that. We've seen that brought up. I just think for everyone tonight, and I'm going to thank Senator Vance. I think this is the conversation they wanted to hear, and I think there's a lot of agreement. This is one that we are miles apart on. This was a threat to our democracy in a way that we had not seen, and it manifested itself because of
this is how we're going to close the debate with this discussion.
He didn't lose the election.
Moderators are disgraceful.
Terrible question.
As expected.
I'm focused on the future. Did Kamala Harris censor Americans from speaking their mind in the wake of the 2020 COVID situation?
That is a damning non-answer.
It's a damning non-answer for you to not talk about censorship. Obviously, Donald Trump and I think that there were problems in 2020. We've talked about it. I'm happy to talk about it further. But you guys attack us for not believing in democracy. The most sacred right under the United States democracy is the First Amendment. You yourself have said there's no First Amendment right to misinformation. Kamala Harris wants to use the power of the government and big tech to silence people from speaking their minds. That is a threat to democracy that will long outlive this present political moment. I would like Democrats and Republicans to both reject censorship. Let's persuade one another. Let's argue about ideas, and then let's come together afterwards.
You can't yell fire in a crowded theater. That's the test. That's the Supreme Court test.
Tim, fire in a crowded theater. You guys wanted to kick people off of Facebook for saying that toddlers shouldn't
Senator,
wear
the governor
masks.
does have the floor.
Fire in a crowded theater. That is criticizing the policies of the government, which is the right of every American.
Senator, the governor does have the floor for 1 minute to respond to you.
Yeah. Well, I don't run Facebook. What I do know is I see a
Yes, you do.
candidate out there who refused, and now again, and this, I'm pretty shocked by this. He lost the election. This is not a debate. It's not anything anywhere other than in Donald Trump's world. Because look, when Mike Pence made that decision to certify that election, that's why Mike Pence isn't on this stage. What I'm concerned about is, where is the firewall with Donald Trump? Where is the firewall if he knows he could do anything, including...
I mean, JD's got to be stronger on this. I mean, given what they're doing to Trump right now, I mean, this is like this is like softball city.
All the cases they have against them.
Even if the president doesn't. And I think Kamala Harris would agree, she wouldn't have picked me if she didn't think I would do that. Because of course that's what we would do. So America, I think you've got a really clear choice on this election of who's going to honor that democracy and who's going to honor Donald Trump.
Governor, your time is up. Thank you, gentlemen. We will be right back with both of our candidates. The CBS News vice presidential debate continues.
You see, Trump, he hit on Waltz's remark about being friends with school shooters. He asked is he insane? He did say that. It was a Smith slip, but whoop.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of talk about that comment online. Listen, JD still giving, I think, a masterful performance. This second half after the first commercial, maybe not necessarily as strong as the first. I thought his abortion talk was weak. I thought his gun answers were a little weak as well. Could have really talked about what Tim Walz has done in Minnesota with violent offenders, letting them out. Some of what he's done in Minnesota as far as that goes. All these gun-free zones, and he could. There's a lot of parlaying he could have done out of that. I thought that was not his best, but overall, as far as articulating Republican policies, he's done as good a job as anybody I've ever heard. But I think he could have been stronger even there too. Walz is not worried about imprisoning the political opponents. I mean, are you kidding me? How does he not jump all over that?
Oh, yeah.
I think he kind of let him off the hook there a little bit. But I mean, just overall, this is a masterful performance by J.D. Vance overall. I thought the two things for me were the abortion and the gun talk. I thought not his best. But overall, man. His opening, by the way, I thought was absolutely brilliant to go immediately into a little bit of his story and then that was just masterful. His first answer of the night. So we'll see with the closing. I'm assuming we're going to get closing arguments here now. But again, I just ask you this. We're an hour and 40 minutes into this debate. Can you see J.D. Vance as president? Can you see Tim Walz as president? I mean, the distinction just couldn't be.
Dichotomy galore.
I mean, one's ready for prime time and one is
ready for bedtime.
ready for bedtime. And the moderators get an F- again.
Oh, atrocious!
Just disgracefully atrocious.
Yeah.
The two moderators in the reloading of the questions, especially the. Would you like to Tim Walz? They just go, would you like to respond? Yeah. To J.D. Vance, they reload the question to try to give cover to Walz and what he just said. I mean, so they're just
They took him for a nice
total abomination. Honestly, if they could have walked him out of the building after the only thing that's been worthwhile from them is the Tiananmen Square thing.
They're going to waltz him out of the building, Big D.
I mean, the Tiananmen Square thing was shocking, and quite the Kamala-like word salad from Tim Walz to a whole lot of words to just say, yeah, I lied about Tiananmen Square.
Knucklehead.
I was not there for the Tiananmen Square massacre, as all of you have now attended this massacre here tonight. Because that's what this is.
The Tiananmen takeout.
Yeah, the Tiananmen takeout and the VP takeout, because that's what, for the most part, this has been. And good for by the way, good for him on challenging the moderators, just as we said he would if he had to, and he did. And he did viciously, by the way, which was great. So we're in commercial break here, and we're waiting again. Closing. You know, and JD's done a good job of refocusing, by the way, on we're looking towards the future, and we're looking, so he's done a good job of that as well. But God, the moderators are just absolutely horrid.
Explains themselves is so key to understanding their perspective, and that's why the face-to-face ones we have on Face the Nation are so important.
Welcome back to the CBS News Vice Presidential Debate. It is now time for the closing statement. Senator Vance won the virtual coin toss and elected to go last. So, Governor Walz, you are first. You have 2 minutes.
Well, thank you, Senator Vance. Thank you to CBS News. And most importantly, thank you to all of you. If you're still up and the folks who miss Dancing with Our Stars, I appreciate it. But look, the support of the democracy matters. It matters that you're here. And I'm as surprised as anybody of this coalition that Kamala Harris has built, from Bernie Sanders to Dick Cheney to Taylor Swift, and a whole bunch of folks in between there. And they don't all agree on everything, but they are truly optimistic people. They believe in a positive future of this country, and one where our politics can be better than it is. And I have to tell you, that better than it is the sense of optimism that there can be an opportunity economy that works for everyone, not just to get by, but to get ahead. And the idea that freedom really means something. Not the freedom of government to be in your bedroom or exam room, but the freedom for you to make choices about yourself. Now look, we all know who Donald Trump is. He's told us, and as Maya Angelou said, believe him when he told you that. His first inaugural address talked about American carnage. And then he spent 4 years trying to maybe do that. Senator Vance tonight made it clear he will stand with Donald Trump's agenda. He will continue to push down that road. Excuse me. Kamala Harris gives us a different option. Now, I'll have to tell you, I'm going to be careful about the quotes, but there's one that Senator Vance said that does resonate with me. He said, Donald Trump makes the people I care about afraid. A lot of America feels that way. We don't need to be afraid. Franklin Roosevelt was right. All we have to fear is fear itself. Kamala Harris is bringing us a new way forward. She's bringing us a politics of joy. She's bringing real solutions for the middle class, and she's centering you at the heart of that. All the while asking everyone, join this movement, make your voices heard. Let's look for a new day where everybody gets that opportunity and everybody gets a chance to thrive. I humbly ask for your vote on November 5th, Kamala Harris.
Governor Walz, thank you. Senator Vance, your closing statement.
Well, I want to thank Governor Walz, you folks at CBS, and of course the American people for tuning in this evening. And one of the issues we didn't talk about was energy. And I remember when I was being raised by my grandmother, when she didn't have enough money to turn on the heat some nights because Ohio gets pretty cold at night and because money was often very tight. And I believe, as a person who wants to be your next vice president, that we are a rich and prosperous enough country where every American, whether they're rich or poor, ought to be able to turn on their heat in the middle of a cold winter night. That's gotten more difficult thanks to Kamala Harris's energy policies. I believe that whether you're rich or poor, you ought to be able to afford a nice meal for your family. That's gotten harder because of Kamala Harris's policies. I believe that whether you're rich or poor, you ought to be able to afford to buy a house. You ought to be able to live in safe neighborhoods. You ought to not have your communities flooded with fentanyl. And that too has gotten harder with Kamala because of Kamala Harris's policies. Now, I've been in politics long enough to do what Kamala Harris does when she stands before the American people and says that on day one, she's going to work on all these challenges I just listed. She's been the vice president for 3.5 years. Day one was 1,400 days ago, and her policies have made these problems worse. Now, I believe that we have the most beautiful country in the world. I meet people on the campaign trail who can't afford food, but have the grace and generosity to ask me how I'm doing and to tell me they're praying for my family. What that has taught me is that we have the greatest country, the most beautiful country, the most incredible people anywhere in the world. But they're not going to be able to achieve their full dreams with the broken leadership that we have in Washington. They're not going to be able to live their American dream if we do the same thing that we've been doing for the last 3.5 years. We need change. We need a new direction. We need a president who has already done this once before and did it well. Please vote for Donald Trump. And whether you vote for me or vote for Tim Walz, I just want to say, I'm so proud to be doing this, and I'm rooting for you. God bless you, and good night.
Senator Vance, thank you. And thank you both for participating in the only vice presidential debate of this election cycle. I'm Margaret Brennan.
And I'm Nora O'Donnell. And a reminder, there are just 35 days until Election Day. Please get out and vote. And for all of us here at CBS News.
All right, there you go. There's the end of the debate. They're signing off. Well, men shake hands. And there you go. So I didn't mention before, let me mention that all of this coverage tonight of the debate is brought to you by our sponsor, TrumpKnifeSet.com, TrumpKnifeSet.com, an exclusive limited edition series of collectible knives that every patriot will want to own, only available at TrumpKnifeSet.com. And, of course, the people at TrumpKnifeSet.com believe in over-delivering on value. When you reach your third month, as a proud owner of this collection, we'll send you a free LED display case valued at $120. It's a completely custom-designed illuminated wooden display case with a beautiful cherry wood finish and gold trim, absolutely perfect for showcasing your growing collection of Trump knife sets. Whether on a tabletop or mounted on a wall, it's designed to display your patriotism for everybody to see. Of course, time is running out. You don't want to miss this opportunity. Go to TrumpKnifeSet.com right now to check availability and secure your spot before it's too late. Every month, your collection will grow with unique, iconic knives like the Keep America Great knife and the We the People knife and the Make America Great Again knife. Each knife is a powerful symbol of our American values, a tangible piece of Trump's legacy, and a call to every patriot who cherishes this great country. And all of this available exclusively at TrumpKnifeSet.com. Check them out, TrumpKnifeSet.com, a great, powerful way to honor the 45th President of the United States and, of course, showcase your American pride. So check them out, TrumpKnifeSet.com, and we thank them for, of course, sponsoring this coverage tonight. Slick, give me your thoughts on what we saw.
Well, in the spirit of the Trump knife set, I think that J.D. Vance proverbially carved up Mr. Walz. I'll put it that way. Listen, I mean, Walz had some. Look, he's better than Kamala. I'll give him that. He's a little bit more on his feet. He is a governor, but man, I got to tell you, I thought JD did a super job tonight. And you're right. Who's presidential and who isn't? It's clear. I hope the American public, especially those on the fence, a lot of the conservatives that, not conservatives, a lot of the independents, I should say, are out there. Well, which way do I want to go? I really hope that this helps drive it home. You had said like a couple of nights ago that you didn't think that it would swing the vote too much, but I think that he did make some profound statements. You do have to look at this as who do you want as your president. Clearly, J.D. Vance is the man. The way he articulates, he's quicker. You got. Look at the everybody's going crazy now about the statement he made that he's friends with school shooters, right? He makes friends with school shooters.
That's one place I guess he's got an advantage over Vance tonight. He's friends with more school shooters than Vance is.
Yeah,
I like my vice presidents to not be friends with school shooters, but maybe I'm sure that was just a slip up.
That was nerves. I mean,
certainly a weird one.
Composure wise, I thought J.D. Vance had far more composure. I thought he was much more stately the way he responded. He was patient. He was kind. He was respectful. I liked his close. He did appeal to the American people. He championed them he said good things about them. He's rooting for them. I like what he said, and he's very humble. And I thought he did a fantastic job. I would like to see him, like you, come out a little bit more in defense of the president in terms of the way way they're treating him with these court and all these rogue cases they have. He didn't go there for whatever reason. He did bring up the energy, which I thought that was a big miss too. The close was horrible. To go into January 6th, that needs to be deep six, Big D. That was a complete waste of a good 10 minutes.
Republicans have got to figure out. To continue to agree to do these things with these Democrat apparatchiks as these so-called moderators, and they're nothing of moderators. They're propagandists sitting there and just spouting left-wing nonsense. I don't know. I don't know what they do about that. I didn't. To answer your question, Fran, I didn't. I don't know. I mean, that's the January 6th receiving more time than other questions we could have gotten to is just why you just hate the media. It's just disgraceful. We got to, the Project 2025, of course, but to spend that much time on the election and the way they frame these questions, I don't know what the Republicans can do about it. Especially they talk about January 6th, and then, of course, nothing is brought up about the fact that we've just learned.
Right. Nancy and...
Yeah. In recent reporting from John Solomon and what some of the work that Barry Loudermilk is doing is that Trump gave direct specific, but that never makes it to these discussions.
I know. That was a miss, too, though. He should have jumped on that. I thought he would get that. You can't think of everything. I get it. But, man, that would have been a big miss, Big D.
But I'll tell you, I mean... If you're the Democrats tonight, I mean, I guess they'll look at maybe the last half an hour and say Waltz did better. But man, oh man, you got to be thinking. They'll never admit it, but they got to be thinking, geez, do we have to pull another Biden here and now replace the bottom of the ticket? We've replaced the top. Now do we have to replace the bottom? I mean, the two of them. I mean, you compare the two men and you compare Harris and Waltz. I mean, they're so far over their head. How they can be looked at and taken seriously. If you're serious about issues. I mean, that was just a drubbing, an absolute drubbing. Again, couple moments I thought JD was a little weaker. Could have had a much better response. But one of the things I've always talked about when it comes to Republicans is we don't have somebody to articulate the message. Who is the messenger? Trump, DeSantis have been the two most effective messengers, but nobody else when it comes to any of this. When we go into these budget fights, when we go into all this, there's never somebody who can articulate a damn position. Well, tonight, J.D. Vance did as good a job of taking complex policy matters and articulating them in a way that the Joe normal voter could relate to.
Yep.
He did it as good as I've ever heard for most of the night. So, I mean, I thought it was more than a wipeout than I even thought it would be, if I'm being frank.
Yeah, I thought so.
I really did. I don't, again, does it move the needle? I don't know. They'll say he did fine. They'll say he did better than Kamala did. Right. And,
ain't saying much.
Ain't saying much. But, man, JD was good. You can just tell he's just ready for prime time.
Yep.
So, absolutely fantastic. So, all right, those of you watching on LFS6B socials, thanks so much for joining us. Slick, thanks for hanging. Have a good rest of the night. And I'll see you tomorrow morning, and then we'll be back tomorrow night, and we'll talk more about this debate night. Thanks for watching, everybody. Make sure you hit the like, subscribe, whatever channel you're watching on. Hit the thumbs up. We appreciate it. And have a good rest of the night. Live from Studio 6B. We'll see you tomorrow night.